hit subscribe. Subscribe to my guy, Uncle D. Tell him Big Bass sent you.
Spurling. I'm an attorney here in Houston, Texas, an advocate for black men, largely because I am a black man. I'm a black father. I have black sons. Hey, man, I do what I do.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the broadcast. This is Dennis Spurling. I'd like to thank everybody for being here today. This is, of course, the Dennis Spurling broadcast. And the name of this one is Nicki Minaj attacks Don Lemon after he invades a white nationalist church. So, well, we got a lot to talk about here today. And I want to get a big shout out to everybody who's coming in. Now, this is a very interesting conversation that we're going to have. And you're actually going to learn something about the underlying subject matter, and that has to do with white nationalism. Now, before, or really white nationalist churches, which I find, how can you be white nationalist Christian church? That seems like a lot of conflict in there. But anyway, make sure that you guys subscribe to the channel if you hadn't already. I'd appreciate it if you would, because we're marching towards 100,000. I'd love to have a plaque up on the wall here behind me. And so it's you guys who can help me get to that point. Now, where do I begin? So I'm sure most of you all know, and I'm sure there's other podcasters and folks who cover this conversation. I've seen it, but I don't think anybody's going to cover it quite like I'm going to cover it. Because it's not just really about Nicki Minaj, it's what's really going on. Now, a lot of people will say, hey, he wouldn't have invaded a Muslim church like that, right? Can we all agree that he would not have invaded a mosque or a synagogue? Can we agree? Right? I think we can agree to that. Well, here's the thing. Today, we're going to begin with this story that tells you everything about where America is right now and where it's headed if we don't wake up. And recently, you had former CNN anchor Don Lemon. He was caught up in a controversial protest that he literally stormed a church in service in St. Paul, Minnesota, not for worship, but to confront a pastor over immigration policy. And the video and the eyewitness accounts show the anti-ICE activists entering the city's church during Sunday service. Okay, give me 1 second real quick. As you guys know, I'm still busy with my work day, so just give me a few seconds. I'm gonna come right back, but y'all.
My name is Dennis Spurling. I'm an attorney here in Houston, Texas. My mandate is to be an advocate for black men, largely because I am a black man. I'm a black father. I have black sons, and I want to make sure that the issues confronting black men are defended, protected, enunciated, spoke upon by black men who have a vested interest in the black community. And so my draw to the Black Manosphere or YouTube in general to use my voice, my wisdom, my experience was solely because black men weren't being heard. But they're hearing us now. They're hearing us as to our issues related to modern relationships, politics, education, finance, and so many other things. And I'm extremely proud of these gentlemen. I'm extremely proud of the people who put this together. It is a wonderful event, and I look forward to attending in the years to come. Hey, man, I do what I do.
All right, welcome back to the broadcast. Thank you all so much. As I said, look, the video eyewitness now what's going on after this disruption, and what's the video eyewitness accounts show these anti-ICE activists entering into this church during a Sunday service and disrupting the worship, intimidating the parishioners, including children. Okay. And among them, Don Lemon, and not merely didn't seem like he was just covering the event, because he actually confronted the pastor while live streaming, and he embedded himself with the crowd as they confronted the worshipers. And like I said, it doesn't just seem like he was doing what people in the news do. Okay, now here's the thing: the Department of Justice is eyeing federal charges and potentially under the what's called the FACE Act. All right, and that's a civil rights statute, which was originally designed to protect Black parishioners from the KKK. But because these federal laws protect the sanctity of a house of worship, and invading it during a service crosses a legal line. If you guys remember, so many years back, the Nation of Islam was confronted by the NYPD, but they couldn't actually go into that mosque in New York because of these same lines, these same federal laws. So they had to obey the sanctity of the church, unless they were actually running in there trying to chase an actual criminal. Okay, after seeing them. So, so this is nothing new. All right. Now, what makes this even more explosive is the reason behind the disruption. The protesters targeted the church because they believe one of the pastors also holds a role with federal immigration enforcement. They think he's a member of ICE, and they oppose that enforcement. But see, so they're basically saying, how can you be a pastor of the Christian church and you're targeting these poor illegal immigrants? In other words, what would Jesus do? Right? Clearly, this church is not legitimate. But again, if you understand the white nationalist or white Christian nationalist ideology, it makes a lot more sense. Now, on top of that, okay, that controversy, now you got Nicki Minaj, who swept into the story on social media, publicly attacking Don Lemon for his presence and coverage on X. She blasted him in all caps, calling him disgusting, demanding that he be jailed, and basically calling him we'll call him block sucker. Okay, that's what she said. He was a block sucker. He was out there on the block being a sucker. That's what she said, because YouTube knows that this is a family-friendly broadcast. And we would never use a term like that and get my channel demonetized, especially since you all are definitely not really going to be contributing too much to the Super Chat, the Cash App, and the PayPal. So I didn't even bother asking, but you already know, if you learn something, I should earn something. But I'm not going to even bother you all. I know y'all haven't got your checks yet. Okay, as soon as y'all know the Somalis have taken all the checks, all the welfare checks have been confiscated, and your EBT card is short, your SNAP money ain't come in. So I'm not going to even bother y'all, okay? That's why I didn't even say anything. Nevertheless, she called him a block sucker, okay, and said he needed to be put in jail. And Don Lemon, of course, everybody, they condemned the hateful comments, and then he fired back, and he called her unhinged and accused her of speaking on matters she does not know. In other words, shut up and dribble, or in this case, shut up and rap, all right? And she doesn't understand the intensifying, and this what all this did, he called her a pick-me. I think there was probably some other words he wanted to call her, but he chose pick-me. He probably wanted to say something else, but he did refer to her husband's status as a parolee for a certain sort of horrible crime, and that her brother, I believe, he brought up some dirt. So it's a full-grown cat fight going on between Nicki Minaj and Don Lemon. Okay, so Don Lemon and Nicki Minaj. And the other thing he said, he said she's a legal immigrant and she should be deported. I think she's undocumented. So he went there. Okay, he pulled out his FBA card and said, send that tether home. That's basically what it said. So it's getting messy. It's getting real messy. You understand me? Is you know, and my thing is this, okay? We're resting, aren't we? Black America, we're resting, right? Okay, we are resting, and you know, but somehow we still got caught in the middle, okay? And we're forced to try to figure out whose side we on. You know, so on one side, you got Nicki Minaj, a hip hop icon, black female who's inspired a generation of boss chicks and hot girls, but who is also an undocumented illegal immigrant, okay, who has tethered her way into Black America's heart, and she supports Donald Trump's policy of deporting illegal immigrants. But then she's a full-grown MAGA. And publicly called for the arrest of Don Lemon, right? Hot boy Don, right? Blockbuster Don. And so you got Black America who's caught up in this, you know, and we're resting. And they're trying to pull us back in. You see? So now we're forced to deal with this. So you know, here's the thing. Let's go ahead and look at the footage, because again, I don't want to spend all my precious time with you all dealing with this, but we do have some interesting footage, and there's a couple of people who have some things to say. Now I'm gonna play the footage. You all let me know what you think. Okay, you tell me what you think. Okay, I don't know. Okay, I don't listen to Nicki Minaj's song. It's before my time. I was Lil' Kim. Lil' Kim was my hot thought. You know, Lil' Kim was, when she came out, you know, with that album cover, I was like, wow, that was amazing. Like, wow, they can do that? Is this porn? You know what I mean?
I know they were going to this church.
I didn't even know they're going into this church.
Wasn't this you right before it?
They're getting the operation together again. This is an
Right
operation
before.
that is secret, that they invited folks out. Can't tell you what is going to happen, but you're going to watch it live unfold here on the Don Lemon Show.
Now you can pause it right.
All right, you guys are saying you couldn't hear the sound. Let me try that again.
I know they were going to this church.
I didn't even know they're going into this church.
Wasn't
Organization. I didn't even know they were going to this church.
I didn't even know they're going into this church.
wasn't this you right before it?
They're getting the operation together again. This is an
Right
operation
before.
that is secret, that they invited folks out. Can't tell you what is going to happen, but you're going to.
I said, I don't know nothing. I ain't see nothing. I don't know nothing. I ain't see nothing. Okay? That's what he said. All right? It's cutting up, man. I'm going to have to get this taken care of. But anyway, so this is Don Lemon basically saying, I don't know, you know, and then this guy is calling him out on it. And so then after that, people start going in on Don Lemon. Number one is the El Presidente.
Toughest people around.
Y'all listen to, can y'all hear it now?
These are tough people. So this is what the people are trying to protect, because all ICE wants to do is get them out of our country, bring them to prisons and jails and mental institutions from where they came. That's all they want to do. They're patriots, and they have to be abused by guys like Don Lemon, who's a loser, lightweight. I saw him the way he walked in that church. It was terrible. I have such respect for that pastor. He was so calm. He was so nice. He was just accosted. What they did in that church was horrible yesterday.
Fair use.
Look at it here. 24 convictions. 24 times convicted.
So what we see here is, the president's making the case for the fact that, hey, ICE is getting rid of crooks and criminals. This is what ICE is doing. And I mean, he's putting up photographs. Okay?
Not charges, these are convictions. So he comes from outside the country. Do you think he's going to be good here? Convicted 24 times, he's going to be good here, right? It doesn't work that way.
I agree. So, of course, Don Lemon was on a show. He had something to say in response to Nicki Minaj. Y'all can check this out.
Install this and the language that's used. I think it's interesting just because Nicki has been, over the last couple of months, made it clear that she is now publicly.
The language that she used, somebody typed block sucker. Okay, so he's on the block. That's what they said. Nicki called him a block sucker. So he on the block, sucking up all the air on the block. I guess that's what it means, YouTube, because of course it's a family-friendly broadcast. We would never use that sort of terminology here because that would get me demonetized. Okay, but let's keep listening.
Supporting, and I think maybe she has all along, but now publicly making known her support for the Trump administration and even the MAGA movement. The choice of words that she used to go after you, I'm not surprised she went after you.
Block sucker. She called him a block sucker, probably directed at the fact, well, I'm not going to go there, okay, because I know they got the Rainbow Mafia out here. Y'all will not demonetize Uncle D, okay? But she called him a block sucker, okay? That's what Nicki called him.
Homophobic. Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't think you have to black it out. You should show it to people. She called me Don, sucker lemon is disgusting. Look, this is what I'll say to Nicki Minaj. I normally don't respond to things like this, but, F it. I'm going to do it this time. I think Nicki Minaj has made it very clear how she feels about African Americans in this country. I don't think she's one of them, obviously. And she should, under Trump's rule, he pulling out. He has pulled out his FBA card. You hear what he said? She's already made it clear how she feels about African American, and she didn't even like us. Okay, that's what he said. Did you hear what he said? Let's go back. All he had to do was say, "This is delineation at work right here." He gonna pull out the tether card. He gonna put that tether card down on there. F it. I'm going to do it this time. I think Nicki Minaj has made it very clear how she feels about African Americans in this country. I don't think she's one of them, obviously. And she should, under Trump's rule, she should be deported because I don't think, reportedly, that she is a legal citizen here. She is undocumented. And so she has shown her.
Somebody put the ICE hotline up on the chat room. Somebody put the ICE hotline. Don Lemon, okay? Don block sucker, and I said block. Okay, I said block, like you on the block hanging out. I didn't say anything, but he said that Nicki, we need to call ICE on Nicki Minaj. Isn't that something, man? Wouldn't that be something if ICE pulled up on Nicki Minaj when she was riding down the street, in her pretty pink car and just snatched out and sent it to El Salvador? That'd be something to see. That would go viral. That would definitely go viral. Don Lemon said, round them up and send them home. He sounds quite MAGA. I mean, they're angry with Nicki Minaj because she's MAGA, but that was the most MAGA thing I've heard. Think about that. That was straight Don MAGA Lemon. See how we crossed up? See how they got us Black Americans caught up? Why are we dealing with this? Why? Now you got Don Lemon telling people, you got Don Lemon saying we need to deport these illegals. I just want y'all to understand that, man. Just the irony, right? The irony. You mad at MAGA, but now you want to use this whole MAGA deportation movement to get rid of somebody who called you a block sucker. And again, block, B-L-O-C-K. I did not use any sort of homophobic slur. Okay, a block is a place where people live in America. It's the block. Okay, and a sucker could be like a vacuum cleaner. Okay, so he's a block sucker. Clean up the neighborhood. That's what I'm saying. But let's keep listening.
Her disdain for African Americans. So why are you supporting her? Why are you buying her records?
Rob,
she's also supporting.
You don't need to show this clip.
Hit him in the pocket. Look at that. I mean, it's just got messy. Somebody type messy in the chat room. Somebody type messy in the chat room. It's got quite messy. This is messy, messy, messy. Too much messy. Let's hear what everybody else has to say.
How are you?
Good.
Good to see you. We're on. How are you? Good to see you. You're not saying what it is, what's going on.
Now, they arrested this lady right here. They arrested her. Okay. Now y'all know I'm not messy. I know my people, and I know if I don't put something like this at the beginning, I'm not gonna get 800-900 views on this tonight. So I got to get y'all interested. I know my people. I know y'all messy people. All my black people come to the front of the room. All my foundational black men, you know you're messy, and this is how I get you in. But you're gonna learn something today. This is the hook, okay? And then I'm gonna force some stuff into your mind when I finish. Keep listening.
But thank you. Tell us why you're doing this.
So
this is Nakima Levy Armstrong. She's on the show on Friday.
Levy Armstrong, civil rights attorney, longtime activist here in the community.
They arrested this lady. She's a civil rights attorney, and she was arrested. Okay, she was. They got those arrest warrants out in the court. And I believe that the federal judge refused to accept the charges against Don Lemon, but this lady, I believe, was arrested. I'll have to double check. I believe she was. It's so interesting. Somebody type interesting in the chat room.
Community. And, we protest and do activism in all kinds of ways.
How are you?
Good.
Good to see you.
You at the white folks church, you're going to go to jail. All right. You going to jail. They about to hit you with that. The irony of being a civil rights lawyer and you end up getting arrested for violating civil rights that was designed to combat the KKK. Think about the irony.
David Easterwood is a pastor here. He is also the director of the field office for ICE in St. Paul. So someone who claims to worship God.
Now look, I don't care what you say. I'm gonna tell you now, you don't go in people's church messing with the church service. Let the people pray. Let the people have their relationship with Jesus. Okay, that's wrong. Now I'm gonna just say this. Y'all know I go to church in 5th Ward, Houston, Texas. If Aaron, one of y'all, ever try to run up in my church, me and the deacon board are gonna whoop your ass. I just want you to know you're gonna get 5-finger fists of fury. If you ever come to my church in 5th Ward with your little cameras, we're gonna take your cameras, we're gonna push you over, and we're gonna take your shoes off of you so you can't run away very fast. All right, don't come to 5th Ward. Don't you do it. You better not come to my church in 5th Ward. You're gonna get these 5th Ward dogs dropped on you. Okay, you're not me and the deacon board. Everybody over there is like 60 plus, but they will beat you down. They got knives. I've seen them. They got them little baby 38 pistols and back. Don't come up here. But bottom line, don't come to people's churches. I don't care what kind of Jesus they pray. They could be playing the MAGA Jesus, whatever, baby Jesus, Jesus in the manger. And let me tell you something. You better not come on first Sunday. If you do come to my black church in 5th Ward, you come on first Sunday, everybody gonna beat you up. The kids gonna be hitting you in the head. Easter Sunday, you better not show up. Okay? You better not come on first Sunday, and you better not come on Pastor Appreciation Day when him and the mother of the church's wife. Don't come. Everybody there. Okay? Don't let the BMWs and the nice suits fool you. We'll put that whoop down on you, boy. Don't come up in there. But this is very disrespectful. Whatever you feel, you don't go into people's churches. That's the sanctuary. All right? Somebody type sanctuary in the chat room. Hallelujah.
Teaching people in this church about God is out there overseeing ICE agents. Think about what we've experienced. The murder of Renee Good at the hands of ICE. A Venezuelan national shot by ICE. A 6-month-old baby who almost died as a result of ICE unleashing military-grade weapons on our community.
You could have handled that outside. You could caught them in the parking lot, okay, where the ushers at. You should have caught them. You should have cleared this with the usher board. If you had an announcement for the church, you should have talked to the usher board, let them put you on the itinerary as a guest, okay, and gone through the proper protocol. You can't just bust in the church. You gonna mess up the pastor collection. You messing up the collection time. He might have let all the people come. Is there one? And y'all come down there. Huh? No, you don't do that. Don't do that. You're wrong. I don't care what anybody says. You don't bust in anybody's church. But
how dare you you claim to be a pastor of God and you are involved in evil in our community?
Do you think Jesus would be? Here's the problem. Here's the problem. And I know it's a lot of black people. All my black Americans, my foundational black, this is why you caught up. You know it's wrong deep down on the inside. And we talked about this last night. You know rounding up all these black and brown people is wrong. You know that. But some of you all are like, but they don't really like us anyway. They call us Acatas and Jareers and the Latinos for Trump, and they thought they were going to align themselves with white folks. Remember, they was all for that. I mean, boy, Donald Trump, remember that? So we kind of like, yeah, go ahead and round them up and send them home. They don't like us. And then on top of that, they've said a lot of, really mean things about black people, especially black Americans, over the years and the decades that they've been here, right? Somebody type "me no black" in the chat room. All right, so we kind of like, yeah, well, baby girl, you know what? We kind of want them gone. Even though we didn't vote for Trump, a lot of these same black people that did not vote for Donald Trump are like, I'm okay with sending some of these people home. So this is the mess that we in. But don't get it twisted. This is definitely evil. This is not what Jesus would do. Okay, I'm just saying. Now, just because you reap a benefit from it, don't try to justify it. So we are politically mature on this page. Yes, it's evil, it's wrong, it's bad, but the way they're doing it, separate people, it's not a good look. But at the end of the day, it benefits us. So we're not gonna get in the way. That's why we're resting, not our fight.
Understanding. We're about worship. These folks. We're about spreading the love of Jesus. But did you try to talk to them? No church had gathered for worship, which we do every Sunday, and we were interrupted by this group of protesters. Yeah. We asked them to leave, and they obviously have not left.
What you need to do is contact the local division of the FOI at the local Nation of Islam mosque. I'm sure there's one there in St. Paul, and they will. I'm sure they will probably for a fee. They will definitely protect your front door and your side door. They make sure everybody gets there safe. They walk the ladies to the car, make sure everybody's cool. You need to hire better security. You can't. Y'all needed the FOI. That's what you needed in your little church. You're obviously you're too nice, okay? Because that's another place they wouldn't be breaking in on Sunday morning. You ain't gonna break into the Nation of Islam mosque. Mosque 58 over there on Old Spanish Trail. They got some really good food over there. They got some delicious food over there on OST right here in Houston, Texas. They got some of the best food. Just go over there. Me and my sons will leave church. We'll leave Black Baptist Church in 5th Ward, go pass by the Nation of Islam mosque and stand outside like we was hanging out the whole time and get some of them plates. Delicious. But you got to get there early when they have the lentil soup. The lentil soup goes quick. And they also had this baked fish. Shout out to all the brothers in the Nation of Islam. I'd like to get some of that bean pie. I ain't seen one in a long time. I'd like to get me a good little bean pie. Man, a bean pie. Woo! A bean pie on a Saturday afternoon. Whole thing. Somebody type whole thing in the chat room. Whole thing. The whole thing can be gone. You can't put a bean pie around. I don't care what black folks say. We like those bean pies. But anyway, let's keep listening. They invaded this church. These white people's church. You just mess with the people's church. My man, like, he don't know what to do. Bro, you supposed, boy, yeah, they'll be getting out of my church. Don't ever let me be the church pastor. Y'all be getting out of that. But anyway, let's do that. Don't do that. That's wrong. They're praying. They're just trying to sing their little song. They just had a hard week. Now, I bet y'all wouldn't go to the little Muslim temple and do that up there in St. Paul. I bet you wouldn't do that. I bet y'all wouldn't do that then. I'm sure some Muslims who are part of ICE but you're just picking on the Christians. Okay, and I get that. Well, you know, either way, let's keep listening. You got a lot of people who have a lot to say. Hit the number 1 button.
And say that Nicki Minaj should be deported?
Yes, that's what you said, baby.
Let me pause. The person who is in the media right now for storming a church,
yes,
completely negating his self-proclaimed Christianity to barge into a church service, interrupt worship.
That's what he did.
Stuff his microphone in the pastor's face and say, don't touch
I just want you to know the only reason I'm listening to you is because you're pretty. If you was not a good looking woman, I would not be happy. I wouldn't listen to you. I'm just saying. Okay, but because you got a long video, but I'm gonna keep listening to you because you're pretty, even though you got a high forehead, and I know you you think a lot, so I'm gonna listen to you too. But go ahead.
Me aggressively. Ask the pastor, what would Jesus do? These illegal immigrants are your neighbors. How could you all just be? They were asking the congregation things like, how can you all be in here worshiping while your neighbors are outside being taken?
What?
How can you just live your life and not take on all the cares of the world and stop everything you're doing with you and your family to come out here and care about the thing that we care about, the thing that we want to force you to care about? And then if you don't speak about it, you're not a Christian. But now he is the same person that I am watching in an interview say that Nicki Minaj, because she is not a citizen of the United States, should be deported. He also went on to say,
I could see dudes going on a nice date with you. They would just listen to you the whole time because you don't even breathe, girl. You just you just be talking like, okay, go ahead, baby, go ahead.
She's not an African American.
She not.
Oh, now you want to delineate.
Yeah.
Now we're not all people of color because Nicki was born in Trinidad.
Yes, that's right.
Now she's not black enough.
She ain't black like me.
Now she's not she's not your neighbor. You want her deported. You see, this is where
she's not.
This
is why we caught up. All right, can y'all still hear me? Hit the number 1 button. This is why we caught up. She's not an FBA. You see that?
Entire ideology falls apart, and anyone who's thinking clearly can see that.
Don Lemon been listening to Tariq Nasheed. He went straight to Tariq Nasheed, FBA on. He skipped right past ADOS and went straight to FBA on it. Send her home. Send her back to Trinidad. That's what he said.
The hypocrisy in it. I thought you didn't like deportations. I thought you said that if a person is here for a certain amount of time, they should be allowed to stay.
That's what I said.
I thought you said that the immigrants built this country. No?
That's what he did say that, baby.
That doesn't apply to Nicki?
No.
So it sounds like...
What does it sound like?
This has nothing to do with illegal immigrants.
What does it have?
It has nothing to do with immigrants. What? It has to do with whatever you are told to do by the Democratic Party. You don't really care. This is why Tom Homan received an award from Barack Obama. This is why Tom Homan was in charge of Barack Obama's deportation operation.
Right.
But now that he's employed by Trump, he's, bad man.
He's bad. That's right.
It is pure hypocrisy.
It is.
Okay? And they love to take what someone says and make it into something they didn't say. Nicki made a comment, and now she's not African American. And
she was never African American. That's the thing. She was never African. She was always from there. Okay, and my thing is, how you gonna be an illegal immigrant and support MAGA? That's my thing. The MAGA deport, they're gonna deport Nicki. Okay, somebody put the ICE hotline in the chat room. Go ahead, put the ICE hotline.
Nicki is a legal immigrant to this country.
Do we know? Has that stopped?
Which we welcome wholeheartedly.
See, that's you. Not everybody, baby. Not everybody. Some of these black folk in the chat room right here, they want to see them all gone, even if they did vote for Kamala Harris. That's the whole point. This is why we caught up in this, man. We trying to rest, and y'all keep getting us caught up. Nicki, I didn't even know Nicki and Don knew each other. Okay, somebody said tether Nicki and LGBT Don. Yeah, I mean, the Democrat Party is just tearing each other up over there right now, man. Just keep listening.
Who's contributed here and paid taxes and created art, okay, and stimulated the economy in many ways, okay? She, I would argue, is an asset to the United States, okay?
I don't know, man. I don't know if she's an asset, baby, because she brought a lot of thoughtism. She brought about a lot of hot girl summers and boss chicks. I don't know if that's necessarily an asset, but we'll keep listening to you.
Who's a legal resident of the United States.
How you
but
know
because she says something you don't like, now would you say you want ICE to pick her up? How would she be deported, Don?
Just call
in order for her to be deported, you said you want to abolish ICE. How's she going to be deported if we don't have ICE? You stormed into a church because you suspected an ICE officer attended that church.
That's a good question. Valid point.
So you want him to show up to work just to deport Nicki? It's okay if he comes to work to deport Nicki? Will he still be allowed to go to church?
See, she got you. See, that's how your woman look at you when she catch you in a lie. Okay, see how she look. All you fellas out there, that's how your woman look at you when she catch you in a lie. If you see your woman looking at you like that, then you lost. Just go ahead and ease on up out of you lost. You see what I'm saying? That's the look right there. You just go ahead, tuck your little head, and just walk away. Okay, that's it. See that look? That's the look of a winner. She won. Praise God. Go ahead, baby girl. Keep talking. Keep on. Somebody says she is distracting us. She know what she's doing. Okay? You know what you're doing, ma'am. You know what you're doing. You distracting her. Why can't you put a burqa on or something like that? Praise God. Go ahead.
When you start asking questions, it exposes a lot. They don't care about deportations.
They don't.
They don't. They don't care about insulting people who have legal status in this country. They don't even care about you being black. If you say anything they don't like, now Nicki made it clear how she feels about African Americans. Don't lump us in, Don. She didn't say anything wrong about Black Americans.
She has said it in the past, but Don is mad because Nicki called him a block sucker. That's why he's mad. So, that's why he's angry. Okay, I think if we just want to be honest, he's angry because, he tried to be pro-black and manly, but then Nicki said, no, you're a block sucker. Okay, meaning that he's on the block using a vacuum cleaner, right, to clean it up. That's what I interpret that as. But go ahead, ma'am. Go ahead.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
She's talking about you specifically. And what weak people do is they like to galvanize a group. They don't have their own internal power to just speak for themselves. They always have to say, you see what she said about all of us guys?
Yeah.
No, Don, she's talking to you. Hey, black people, be outraged. Nicki said something about all of us. Hey,
y'all, she's a tether. She need to be deported. That's basically what he sounds straight MAGA. Don Lemon done turned MAGA, and that's crazy, man. Look at the world. The world is upside down. The world is just turning upside down. Don Lemon has turned MAGA. Don Blocksucker Lemon has turned MAGA on us. Go ahead.
Be outraged. She's not even a citizen, guys. Let's rally.
Let's deport her.
Strong people don't need to do that. You should be able to stand 10 toes down on whatever your position is, Don, and say what you need to say without trying to lump everybody in to come and get behind you because you feel there's strength in numbers because you don't have any power on your own. It's so typical of Don Lemon. I don't think it's wise for Don Lemon to come and start arguing about Nicki Minaj. I mean, he's just... Now,
I want y'all to know, he probably spent a lot of time listening to Nicki. I bet she know all the lyrics. Somebody put all the Nicki Minaj songs in the chat room. I bet she knows all the lyrics. She's a fan. Baby, you clearly are a fan of Nicki Minaj. What do they call Nicki Minaj's fans? I forget what they call her, Nicki. What are her fans? They call her Minajettes. What do they call them, man? I don't know. The bumblebees or something like that. She's a fan. You came hard. Okay, go ahead.
Already insulted the Christian community, and now you're about to insult the Barbs. It's just like,
yep. See, I knew it. You're a Barb.
Who's gonna come get him? Like somebody that loves him needs to reel him in. I would say maybe it should be his husband, because Don Lemon loves to say white people are evil. Everyone except for his white man. White men are the problem, except for his white husband.
Did you see the way she tilted her head off to the side a little bit? Let me see. A lot of you men. Let me just take a side note here. Because look, I don't give relationship advice. But the one thing I am is emotionally intelligent. And you got to be emotionally intelligent if you're going to be a man like me, because I talk entirely too much shit in real life. I am one shit talking, domino, spade playing. I talk shit in Uno, okay? So you got to be able to read the room, okay? And one thing I'm really good at is reading women. I mean, you put me in a room, I can tell you everything about. I can look at them, yeah, all right, I read between the lines. And when I see this, most of you men don't see this. The women, all the ladies know what I'm saying. Okay, they know what I'm saying. I want you to look at this slight head tilt in the little flick of the hair. All right, she just watch this, and I'm gonna do it at the same time she does it, so we all can be on the same page. All right, let's try.
Men are the problem,
What?
except for his white husband.
You see that? Did you see that? Oh man, she told him. She told him. She said so much with that little. I can't really do it because my neck is stiff, you know, but. You see that? Oh, man, baby girl, go on.
That works. When you break Don Lemon down to what he really is, unethical, immoral, oh, Lord.
Dramatic, no.
Loves to sow dissension,
hit him in the LGBT,
disgraced journalist,
oh Lord, Jesus.
Who's just begging to be relevant.
Oh no, let me go on. Well, she closed the show. Oh, I'm out of here. I'll see y'all later. Ain't nothing else I can say about that. Woo, praise God. Boy, oh boy. Did you see that? Did you see that vicious head tilt with the hair? That needs to be clipped and sent. That needs to be clipped and sent. But anyway, family, let's go ahead and continue. I want to make sure I had to lay the foundation. Now, again, okay, to all my people. You know, as I said earlier, we're wrestling with the optics. All right, here they're wild. They are wild. And make sure y'all can hit the #1 button. Let me know you can hear me clearly because I've been having some sound issues. You know, the Black people, especially foundational Black Americans, we're trying to figure out where we land. On one hand, you know, you got Black Americans who do support the deportation of illegal immigrants. That position didn't come out of nowhere. It is coming out of a growing delineation movement where foundational Black Americans are increasingly saying we are not responsible for everybody and immigrants are on their own. But now the immigrant in question is Nicki Minaj. And on the other hand, many of us don't like the fact that Nicki Minaj is a full-blown MAGA aligned with Trump and supporting policies historically hostile to Black people, even while benefiting from Black culture and Black protection. And then there's the flip side. We absolutely do not trust some of these white nationalist churches. And I'm not saying those people in that church were white nationalists. I'm not saying that at all, okay? But we know that white nationalist Christians are around and they do not like us and they never have, okay? And Christianity, when it's fused with white nationalism, has never worked in Black people's favor. Remember, the KKK were Christians, all right? Hell, even the Yahtzees were Christians, okay? So, you know, but then we don't necessarily like Don Lemon either, do we? Right? We don't really like Don Lemon, okay? And because while he's a foundational Black American man, he speaks pro-Black rhetoric, the man is openly gay. Okay, which for many Black Americans runs directly against our traditional Christian beliefs. And not only is he gay, he's married to a white man. And that definitely complicates the optics even further because you pro-Black, but you're married to a white man. So what you're seeing isn't confusion, is delineation. And foundational Black Americans are separating interests. We're no longer automatically siding with someone just because they're famous or just because they're Black adjacent or culturally influential. And at the same time, we're no longer automatically supporting someone just because they speak pro-Black language if their lifestyle alliances or actions, i.e. Don Lemon, right, contradict deeply with our deeply held communal values. And so this moment exposes the fracture lines clearly. You got an immigrant who says deport them in Nicki Minaj. You got a foundational Black American who says send her back, who's supposed to be a liberal. And then you got this whole white Christian nationalist thing going on that supports the MAGA movement. Okay. And then you got the Black community that is no longer obligated to choose a side just to make outsiders comfortable. And that's the tension, that's the wrestling, and that's exactly where Black America is right now. And here's the thing, this is where the situation turns from uncomfortable to unforgiving. Because for Black America, especially FBAs, both sides of this conflict trigger the same word for different reasons. And that word is what? Sell out. Okay, Nicki Minaj's alignment with MAGA doesn't land in a vacuum. Black people overwhelmingly rejected Donald Trump. Not all of us, but the majority of Black people showed up for Kamala Harris, and we voted against Trumpism. Not all of us. Some of us voted for what we're getting right now. All the people who voted for this say, this is what I voted for, okay? But we're not naive because we understand historically the cost of these white nationalist politics. So when Black cultural icon, i.e. Nicki Minaj, openly supports MAGA and supports the deportation rhetoric that I've explained yesterday, we clearly see it's targeting Black and brown and Asian people, right? You got somebody who does that and publicly calls for the arrest of a foundational Black American man, i.e. Mr. Blocksucker himself, right? That wasn't me that said it, and I'm, Don Lemon. The reaction isn't confusion, it's betrayal. So from the perspective of many Black Americans, Nicki Minaj didn't just pick a political side. She crossed the line. She aligned herself with a movement that has openly antagonized Black voters and minimized Black suffering and empowered forces that historically do not protect Black people's interests. And that's why people see her as a sellout, not because she's independent, but because she's aligning upward with power that has never aligned with us. And that's why Don Lemon called her a pick-me. Somebody type pick me in the chat room. But then the mirror flips. Don Lemon can't escape from that sellout charge either. Yes, he's an FBA. Yes, he speaks this pro-Black language. Yes, he positions himself as someone fighting for civil rights and against prejudice and racism and whatnot. But Black America has always understood that who you decide to deal with on the romantic level, that matters. Okay, you pro-Black in the streets, but you all white in the sheets. You see, and see, marriage has never been a neutral in our history. It always been political, cultural, and symbolic. So as we say, marriage is a business. So who you decide to partner with says a lot about what your values are. So when you got this so-called pro-Black man and he's married to a white man, okay, especially in the country where interracial proximity is often been used to dilute, manage, or neutralize Black resistance, people ask the hard questions. How do you claim pro-Black solidarity while being fully integrated into the very social structure Black people have historically been excluded from? Now, we've been hearing a lot about the Black Panther stuff in the internet. The so-called, what's his name? What y'all call him? The Latino Panther, whatever this cat name is. But, and he's talked a little bit about, Huey P. Newton and the integration and, how the Black Panthers are integrated. But what you have to understand is that Black Panthers were infiltrated by a lot of people, you see, and they were infiltrated by a lot. The Japanese felt like I told you. And so it seems as though when they got infiltrated with people who were not Black and not from the community, that's when it started going down. So again, and a lot of those Black Panthers were messing around with those non-Black women. You understand? And it was enough Black women in the Black Panther that if they just wanted to keep the messing around in-house, they could have done that, but they chose otherwise. Nevertheless, the question isn't about hate, it's about coherence. And that's why this moment is so revealing. Nicki Minaj is seen as selling out politically. Don Lemon is seen as selling out culturally. And the white nationalist doesn't accept either one of them anyway. you understand? Whether we talking about MAGA or whatever, okay? Which leaves Black Americans standing still. Not confused, but just done. And done being emotionally conscripted, done being forced to defend people who don't defend us, done being pressured to pick the least problematic option just to keep someone else's coalition alive. We're not. This is what delineation looks like in real time. So foundational Black Americans are no longer automatically loyal to Black faces. Okay? That immigrant narrative, celebrity status, pro-Black rhetoric alone, that's not going to do it. See, alignment now requires consistency and political, cultural, and moral consistency. And when none of the options meet that standard, the answer isn't just choose one anyway. The answer is step back, go sit on the couch. We're going to sit this one out. You see? And that's what makes this moment different. For the first time in a long time, Black America is not scrambling to belong to someone else's fight. We're watching two sides clash. We're watching immigrant MAGA politics on one end, pro-Black rhetoric with contradictory alliances on the other side saying, and that's not our war, okay? And that refusal, that's not weakness, that's sovereignty. Now, here's the thing. I mentioned a lot about white nationalist church. This has been something I want to talk about for a while, okay? Because it's been big in the news. It's had a lot of people talking about, oh, America was a Christian country. Y'all heard that before, right? America was meant to be a Christian country, right? And I refute that because I read enough about the Constitution and those young men, as flawed as they were, you know, the founders of this country, most of them were in their 20s, slave owners, white men. If you look at the Continental Congress, they didn't drink water, they drank ale, they drank beer, they were drunk, and it was hot, okay? And they were young. You know, you could imagine a group of young drunk white boys come up with the idea, I know, we'll just rebel against the king. You see what I mean? The most powerful nation in the world. They had to be drunk to come up with that idea. All right. So but the bottom line is that Nicki Minaj, Don Lemon, and the fact that they invaded a church, what you just watched wasn't simply protest gone too far or a journalist crossing a line. It was a collision between white right-wing Christianity identity, state power, and radicalized enforcement. Because once Christianity gets fused with political dominance, it stops being about faith and it starts being about who belongs and who doesn't. Okay. For years now, a particular version of Christianity, not Christianity as a faith, but Christianity as a political identity, has been wrapped around the idea of this white country or white ethno state of, you know, you got these folks like Nick Fuentes, who himself is a brown person. You know, folks like the Andrew Tate boys, and their daddy was black. So, you know, I don't get it. You got Sneeko, and he's like Filipino. But it's funny because, you know, the white right has farmed out their racism to brown dudes, black dudes and brown dudes, which I just find tremendously ironic. I mean, y'all can't afford to do this on your own. You had to hire some cheap labor. But anyway, you know, like I said, this political identity has been wrapped around the idea of this white country or this white ethno state. These borders have become sacred. Enforcement becomes holy, you know, and mass deportation gets framed not as a policy, but as a moral necessity. And that framework, black, brown bodies, Asian bodies are always the problem to be managed or removed or disciplined. And here's the part people don't like to say out loud, but we're going to say it anyway, because the truth matters more than comfort. There are hundreds of thousands of undocumented white or European immigrants in the United States, and researchers and policy analysts estimate anywhere from roughly 500,000 to 800,000, depending on how you count who overstays their visas and those type of violations. They exist. They live here. They work here, and yet they don't. We don't see them being paraded on the evening news. You don't see them dragged out of churches. You don't see them, their faces used as symbols of invasion. What you see instead is selective enforcement. You see ICE raids concentrated in Black, brown, and Asian communities and marketed as law and order, but applied unevenly. And whatever your position is, whether you think strict enforcement is good or bad, we have to be honest about who is being done to. Because when enforcement consistently targets certain races while others remain invisible, that's racialized power. And that's where the church incident becomes symbolic, okay? Again, I'm not saying that that church that Don Lemon invaded was a white nationalist church. I'm not saying that at all, but it is definitely symbolic of what we see going on. And once Christianity gets absorbed into a system, once it becomes a badge of national and racial identity, it no longer stands apart from the state. It becomes part of the machinery. And when that happens, churches stop being houses of worship and start being political symbols. See, faith becomes expendable. And moral language gets used to excuse things that would otherwise be unacceptable. And that's why this broadcast isn't about defending one side or attacking the other. It's about telling the truth. And because history shows us this pattern over and over again, when religion gets fused with racial hierarchy and state power, it's never really about God, it's about control. Now, I have some more videos I want you all to check out. You guys make sure you hit the #1 button and let me know you can hear this clearly. And again, if you learn something, I should earn something. Okay, I want to give a shout out to everybody who's contributed to the Cash App, because the super chat is light tonight, but that's all right, because I'm gonna keep up the good fight. But anyway, big shout out to the folks who's contributed to the Cash App is running across the bottom of the screen, Mr. Watkins and Mr. Johnson. But anyway, let's go ahead and continue. Is the super chat working? Is it working at all? Let me make sure. I might have gotten demonetized, because I know Don Lemon might not like me repeating what Nicki Minaj called him, and that was a block sucker. And when I say block, I mean like a community vacuum cleaner. That's what I'm referring to. All right, yeah, so it's working. Shout out to, oh man, thank you so much. Ben Brockton, thank you so much. You gave out 10 memberships, a member for 10 months. Keep doing what you're doing. Thank you so much. So we are working. So let's go ahead and take the opportunity to learn a little bit about this Christian nationalism style thing, this movement, if you want to call it. Y'all hit the #1 button. Let me know you can hear these. Clearly, I've been having some issues with my my sound, but we'll go ahead and try to proceed and let this thing do what it does. Y'all hit the #1 button.
Nationalism is a political ideology that merges American and Christian identities. It says to be a true American, one has to be a Christian, and not just any kind of Christian, but a Christian who holds fundamentalist religious beliefs that are in line with certain conservative political priorities.
All right, as you notice, did it have anything to do with Jesus? Did it? Somebody type, where's Jesus? That did not have anything to do with Jesus. Keep listening.
Say that somebody was coming into our church and they're black, and would they be eligible for membership in our church? Yes, they of course they would. They'd be eligible for membership in our church. But would they be permitted to participate in, embody, and practice what I would call black culture generally in our church? The answer is absolutely not. Why? Because the characteristics that mark black culture as a generalization, in the same way Paul's talking about Cretans on Crete, they are evil, murderous, violent, bestial people. That's what
they're teaching. This is what they're teaching in the Christian National Church about black folks. You hear that? You hear what he said? Y'all don't know about this? You didn't heard about
They
this?
steal, they kill, they destroy, they look like Satan.
Y'all look, we black folks, this man said in the Christian National Church, or the Christian white national, they say we look like Satan. We look like Satan. Damn. And I guess that means y'all must look like Jesus. Is that what you're saying? That's the inference. If we look like Satan, then white folks must look like Jesus. And of course, if white people look like Jesus, and Jesus was God's son, his only begotten son, and of course God looks like Jesus. You see that rationale? Now imagine being a small white child growing up around this foolishness. And you wonder why they're so messed up. Okay? And then here's the cold part about it. All your heroes are black people, all your favorite ball players, basketball players, football players. So now they got you out here praising the devil, according to your church. You understand what I'm saying? And this is the head job that white supremacy has done on white people. We always talk about the effect that it has on people of color, black people in specifically, but we never talk about the deleterious effect that this white nationalist rhetoric has on white people. It's definitely causing them a lot of issues. But let's keep listening. Hit the #1 button. You can hear.
Yes, there is a prejudice among white Christian nationalists in that church against Catholics, but it's also a prejudice against other groups within.
So you had some commenter say, "Oh no, we just don't like immigrants because they're Catholic." And this white dude is saying, "No, you just don't like them because they're brown." That's what he's about. He's not going to say that, but you can see him. "No, it's not more than just they're Catholic. You don't like them because they're black or brown. They're people of color." Okay.
Within the church as a whole. But I gotta say, it's also racism.
Yeah, I know.
The church has always been a haven for racism, bigotry, and prejudice.
This is the church. He's talking about white people church. You see why black folk don't go to white people church? All you immigrants from overseas, you see why black folk kind of keep to ourselves. We have our own church. I know y'all like, oh, white people are so nice. They don't want your butt up in the church. We respect white people's space. And I've said this and I'm gonna say it again. Okay. Black Americans and white Americans have an understanding. Black Americans and white Americans have been living with each other for centuries, and we work together. We defend this country together. Oftentimes we eat together. We play sports together. But largely, we have our own separate spaces. And it's not necessarily because we're forced to do it. It's because we respect their boundaries and they respect ours. Largely, not all the time, okay? But we like to think, and here's the other thing, we on both sides enforce those boundaries, because they always tell you about the white on black crime throughout history, lynching, Jim Crow, but they never did in slavery, but they never tell you about all the black people that got together and decided to put a whoop down on white folks during slavery. All the white folks that got unalived, and how they couldn't sleep at night, and how the stress they had to deal with. They tried to turn South Carolina or Georgia, or should I say South Carolina, into a Georgia, really, into a white state. There's no blacks here. We got to have somewhere we can sleep. You see what I'm saying? So, this is the mutual understanding that we have. And then when you bring all these immigrants over here, they start breaking boundaries. And next thing you know, you got these people from Nigeria hanging out at the country club. Hello, how are you today? You hanging out over at the goddamn hillbilly beer bar, and you just making issues. You see what I'm saying? So just keep that in mind. And that's why I say we were a lot better as a country when it was just a black and white country. I'm just saying, when it was just foundational black Americans and heritage Americans, we had the same culture, the same language, same religion, generally speaking, and we had the same understanding about racial boundaries. It is what it is, okay? That's not racist to say. I'm just pointing out history, okay? Yes, there's a lot of jealousy amongst these white folk, and as soon as we get some nice stuff together, they want to come in and invade, but we always rebuild, even Black Wall Street. But I'm gonna let this cat finish. Well, actually, I'm gonna move on to the next one. I'll let him finish.
Even if it's just against skin tones and ethnicities, let alone other religions, belief systems, and whatnot. So it's a lot of things.
Yeah. So you see what I'm saying? But he hit the point. He's like, no, it's not just wasn't just the Catholics that they're Catholics, because they're Black.
Tell you something, that is a term that the enemy has created to cause the church to be deceived about what the church in America should actually be doing as it relates to politics. And what the so-called white nationalists in America are doing is what every Christian in every nation should be doing, which is standing for biblical principle to guide policies, period. That's it. Your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Our moral code comes from God. And if it doesn't, whose moral code do you want? What moral code can you trust?
You see? So there you go. Let's keep listening. I just turned the mic up. Let me know if you guys can hear me better. Let's keep moving. Hit the number 1 button.
White Christian nationalism is getting scary. Like, it's literally insane. And just because your pastor is Black does not mean you do not have to worry. Church is a dangerous place to be vulnerable. And if you say, oh, I don't really pay attention, or I don't really get into politics, well, stop listening to everything your pastor says when it comes to outside problems. Some of y'all are mad because people are protesting certain people. It's quite scary to watch some of you slowly get silenced to your reality because your pastors are encouraging you to go mute. Weaponizing verses to excuse abuse and authoritarianism is not faith, it's manipulation. Using Christianity.
I mean, she got that hair just swinging around. That hair is bouncing. I know you trying to, we know, baby. We know you just got it blown out. You know you got it bouncing and like distracting me. Okay, I'm going to let you finish.
To defend cruelty is not faith, it's manipulation. I pray. Some of you do not enslave yourselves.
Yeah, I don't know what you said because you were just talking. Let's go to somebody else. Yeah, but let's keep listening. Hit the number 1 button if you can hear clearly.
Good at building community-based networks through churches and church organizations that meet some of the spiritual and material needs of everyday people. But they are not actually able or interested in meeting the long-term needs of the people that they supposedly serve, and they are actually opposed to public policies that would lift people out of poverty. If we can commit to building real, permanently organized communities across the country, including freedom churches, we can contest the influence the white Christian nationalists are building. The threat of cross-racial organizing, especially amongst poor people who are suffering in an historically...
That's what got Dr. King shot, just so you know. Organizing poor people across the board, it goes directly against what some folks really want to keep in place. I'm going to just say some folks, not them folks, but them some folks, them global folks, those elite folks. But let's keep listening to this and make sure, if you can hear clearly, hit the number 1 button.
Unequal economy is of the gravest concern for white Christian nationalists. This, I think, is the Achilles heel of their movement. And thankfully, it is exactly a moment like it is like now, where that kind of organizing is beginning to bubble up across the country. And I think the days ahead hold even more potential for us to build a fusion movement of the poor. So as we're entering this new year, that's where I'm.
All right, so we are an hour in. If you haven't hit the subscribe button, I need you to go ahead and do that now. We're not going to play this game. Y'all need to subscribe to the channel. In addition to subscribing to the channel, you need to. If you don't hit that button, if you don't hit the like button, what I'm going to have to do is turn on subscribers only, so that only people who subscribe to the channel can comment. Okay, it will only be people who subscribe to the channel and members or super chats. Okay, so let's do me a favor and subscribe to the channel right now. And that especially goes for everybody on the rebroadcast. Don't be over here looking at my stuff for free. All right, let's listen to this fella. Fair use.
White Christian nationalism has absolutely nothing to do with Jesus, Christianity, or religiosity at all. It is simply a ploy to allow some very small sausaged men the ability to beat their women, put them in subjugation.
Look, white people who are listening, this is not me saying this. This is a white man saying this about white people. I'm not saying this. That's why I purposely got a lot of videos, white people describing this, because this is, you all know this is true. You have that uncle. Come on down to the church, John. We want you to come out and hang with us and fellowship with us. And John get down to the church. Oh my God, God damn. Damn, Billy, I didn't know. What are you guys talking about in here? Yeah, well, this is the real Jesus. You know, white pastors had them little effeminate voices. This is the real Jesus. And we were like Joel Osteen. Thank you, everybody. Welcome. Come on down. Come into the sanctuary. But you know, but this is him saying, this is him snitching on his own folk. So you should believe it.
And get rid of anybody that they don't like and steal, murder, etc. That's what it's really all about. Just listen to this.
Have an army. Like, well, she's holding up with paperwork. That's great. Burn the papers. Go in. Be president. Save the country. You're the guy who tweeted out, "He who saves his country violates no law." Let's see it. Do it. We've got a country to save. No more playing games. No, arrest Tim Walz, bring him to D.C., try him, and hang him. Honor Christ. Save the country.
So he wants Tim Walz to hang, even though Tim Walz is a devout Christian.
I mean, just listen to some of this rhetoric, family. Go ahead.
And he says that's honoring Christ. This has nothing to do with Christ, guys. They're just sick.
You are correct about that. This has nothing to do with the Jesus in my Bible. But let's keep listening so you can be convinced.
As a pastor, as a human, and as someone who's given their life to the way of Jesus, I can no longer stand by as Christianity gets hijacked by a particular agenda that is not the way of Jesus. I cannot stand by as a Christian and watch Christ's name get hijacked to further justify hate.
And look, shout out to all the white people who call out this racism, you know, because it takes a lot of courage to do that. There are a lot of white people who have lost their lives, and I did a discussion on this. There's a lot of white people who've lost their lives trying to do the right thing, trying to be advocates for justice and equality. And we appreciate that, okay? And I think all the black people understand that much of the progress that we've made in this country has been because of white people who put it all on the line, whether we're talking about white people who participated in the Underground Railroad, even with the penalties associated with the Fugitive Slave Act, where they could lose their freedom, they could lose their wealth. Great abolitionists like John Brown. We have to make sure we acknowledge the fact that, you know, it's been white people from day one, and I'm going to do a broadcast on that. It's been white people from day one who opposed slavery, who opposed segregation, and who've always, done the right thing. So, let's be mindful of that, okay? But let's keep listening.
Racism, bigotry, misogyny, and white supremacy. The colonizers who came to America said they were Christians. The KKK said they were Christians.
True.
There have been mass shooters whose profile said they were Christians.
And they mean white Christian nationals. Okay, that's what they mean.
There were insurrectionists on January 6th who flew Christian paraphernalia. They claimed to be Christians. There were, check this out, some of you know this, slave owners who claimed to be Christian.
Hell, the Crusades were the Christians come back to take the Holy Land by the sword, okay, and the cannon and the musket. There's always been a way in which many of these white nationalists throughout history, whatever you call it, have practiced their religion.
And what you see in this moment, this week in American history, is you see the twisting of the truth. And what I want to say to you is, if these quotes that Jesus defeated death so you can live by Charlie Kirk and Dr. King was an awful human being and civil rights was a huge mistake, if these feel incompatible, it's because they are. These quotes are not compatible with each other, and I also would like to say they're not compatible with the teachings and way of Jesus. Now, if this makes you uncomfortable, I would invite you to pause for a minute and think about how uncomfortable this makes our people of color feel. I want to say is I can't.
So yeah, so this is something that's really going on, and we're going to deal with it from an academic standpoint. There's some more videos I'd like to share with you guys. Let's see what some brothers have to say about it.
But white supremacist Christian nationalism is big in the black church. In fact, 34% of black Americans support Christian nationalism compared to just 30% of white Americans. Now, how does the powerful prophetic black church that arises during the civil rights movement, that carries people through suffering and oppression, end up moving toward being mere chaplains of the state? Now, scholar Anthea Butler, in her article, The Black Church from Prophecy to Prosperity, sheds light on how this diversion came about. Or as I'll put it, the infiltration of the Anglo-prosperity megachurch model in the black church. Essentially, theology begins to emphasize individual and upward financial and social mobility.
You hear that? Megachurch prosperity preaching? Keep listening.
Instead of collective struggle, support, and justice. It becomes the individual over the community. The scholar Jacqueline Bass goes on to explore how the prosperity gospel, the megachurch model, and neoliberalism within religion in the United States go on to influence the black church. In short, she examines how these...
Hear that? Neoliberalism? That's why you have black pastors now who support, the rainbow agenda, even though there are several quotes in Leviticus and some other parts of the Bible, Old and New Testament, that preach against that. And so, just understand that the black church is not untouched, with these secular beliefs. All churches have been touched, and I'm sure there's some folk in here who can tell you about what, Christians refer to as the last days, and they talk about churches and how they'll be affected. But we don't want to get too far off from that, because this is a subject that most people don't hit. So we want to stay focused on the white Christian nationalist church, so people can understand where these folks are coming from when they say, I'm a Christian on one hand, but I'm also a racist or a bigot, or I believe in all these other things that seem not to mesh with, the teachings of Jesus Christ, who himself was a man of color. Let's keep listening.
These factors lead the black church to move away from looking at structural and institutional sin into focusing on individual faith and hustle culture. So here we are today in 2025, where we have a black church that is more focused on being the passive chaplain of the state, the chaplain of the status quo, instead of being the liberators. This leads us to today, where we have black preachers who will talk about the need for black people to submit to the police and submit to authority, yet say nothing about police brutality, over-policing, or the prison industrial complex that is complicit in modern slavery. We have a preaching establishment that is focused on advancing the structures of capitalism instead of the gospel.
But that's why the black church is dying, and I think many of you all will agree. Even here in the Bible Belt down south, black people used to be the most church attendingest people on the planet, and many of us still go to church. And as I told you all, I'm a proud member of my Black Baptist church in 5th Ward. But you can see that the congregation is getting smaller and smaller and smaller. But let's keep listening.
Liberation and freedom from oppression, and that anything that's not right-leaning ain't right. The black church ultimately formed from slavery, formed from the civil rights movement, formed from identifying with...
I'm going to disagree with this young man on that. The black church was around since the first black folks landed in this country. We would literally go out after being in the fields all day and get together and, talk about God and our beliefs. It was often done in secret. And then, white folks said, well, no, we'll get y'all a black preacher. And they even developed something called the slave Bible, which took out all the freedom talk and the rebellion talk. Anyway, so you get where this fella's going, and I understand what he's saying, and I think you all do. Let's go ahead, because I want to kind of push this thing along. I want to make sure that we are moving right along. Y'all hit the number 1 button if you can hear me clearly. And let me see here. I want to make sure that we get everything in here. Hit the number 1 button if you can hear clearly. Let me see if I can pull another video up. This is one in particular I wanted to deal with. Well, check this out. Let's keep it pushing. Hit the number 1 button. You're clear.
In every way, shape, or form possible to be a white supremacist. I would encourage you to go to my Substack. I've listed the paywall on this article.
Now, this little lady right here, she apparently was, she has a very popular YouTube channel, and she talks about her experience growing up in a white nationalist family. I think she was a Mormon, so it's not just Christianity. And I know Mormonism is a religion. I don't know enough about it to tell you where it diverges from Christianity or what we consider, what we think as Christianity. But she tells a lot, and I'll let her play for a little.
So that everybody can read it and see inside the mind of a very young girl. And I like to post pictures of myself when I was a 3-year-old girl, when my white supremacist indoctrination started, and I began to see people with brown skin as evil monsters. I believed that America was
not see people with brown skin as evil monsters. When you have this white nationalist doctrine telling you that people who are black or brown look like the devil. You see, this is the brainwashing that you're dealing with when you're dealing with these white folk, you see, who've been brainwashed into this belief. All right. But again, this young lady she abandoned the church. I think she divorced her husband, who was heavy into that, and she's been remarried. And, this is her telling her story about what she experienced.
It's a sacred land that God had created and preserved just for my chosen rich white. And that's dumb.
Again, what she's saying is God promised America to white supremacists. This is the rhetoric that's going on over in these churches, okay? And these folk have just as much religious fervor as some of those
on the rise, and you should be very worried about it. I'm Charles Blow, op-ed columnist at the New York Times, and this is my take. Donald Trump recently posted this video on social media.
And on June 14th, 1946, God looked down on his planned paradise and said, I need...
This is June 14th, 1946. That's when Trump was born. That's his birthday. So he's basically, he reposted something, okay, on his channel. This is this is way out there.
Caretaker. So God gave us Trump.
And that video is actually a take on a video that the Ron DeSantis camp had already posted.
And on the 8th day, God looked down on his planned paradise and said, I need a protector. So God made a fighter.
And this is all part.
I mean, these two cats think, Ron DeSantis and Donald Trump saying God made them. God made them to do what they're doing right now. They have anytime you're dealing with somebody who believes that it's scientifically justified or it's religiously ordained, that typically what happens after that is horror and tragedy and genocide. Okay, I want you to keep that in mind. This is why this makes this day. When people start saying they're ordained by God, more people have been unalived in the name of religion and science than any other reason on this planet. Okay, because it is considered sacrosanct. Thank you so much, Christopher Robin. You're the first person to contribute to the super chat. I appreciate you. Thank you so much for that. You're wonderful. I have a civil case I would love to share with you. Location NYC. Thank you so much. First person, at least we got somebody who learned something tonight so far, but we got work to do. Let's keep
part of a surge of white Christian nationalism in America. So what is white Christian nationalism? First, let's start by saying what it is not. It is not white people who happen to be patriotic and go to church. White Christian nationalism is a political movement of oppression that cloaks itself in a religion. And this campaign of white Christian nationalism has been happening for decades. Yeah. Never forget that some people literally thought that Barack Obama was the Antichrist. Never forget that some pitched Sarah Palin as coming to save America from this Antichrist. Never forget.
Somebody type crazy in the chat room. These people are crazy. These people are crazy. You hear me? These people are crazy. So this is what you're dealing with. Let's keep listening, man.
That some people thought that.
Do you understand why black people form their own churches? All you immigrants and folk, you see why black people form their own churches and their own universities? And we had our own neighborhoods, our own little football teams and baseball teams. You understand why Dr. Martin Luther King said, I think I've integrated my people into a burning house. You understand that? Somebody type crazy in the chat room. These are crazy out here. Keep going.
Hillary Clinton was the Antichrist. Never forget that a Christian magazine had to write an article about how Bill Clinton wasn't the Antichrist.
Oh.
And in the lead of that article, they had to say that there had not been a frenzy whipped up like this since JFK, and noted that there was a best-selling book saying what happens to America if it elects a Catholic. White Christian nationalism, although it may be preached in churches, although it may be advanced by people who call themselves Christians, is not about Christianity at all. Tim Alberta, author of the brand new book, The Kingdom, the Power, and the Glory, puts it this way.
But it is certainly quite curious that for many political Christians, they do almost entirely sidestep and avoid the teachings of Christ. And you can understand why, right? This idea that the last shall be first, right? Can you imagine saying that in a context of a Republican political rally?
White Christian nationalism is a political movement of oppression, regression, and vengeance. And it is using religion as a cloak. Let me know what you think.
Let me help you black folks understand this. I want you to understand there are decades of people who really believe that black people are the face of the devil. Okay? Generations of people over decades that truly believe that. And you're dealing with that generation. Now, it's not all white people, but I'm saying it's enough of them that are making an impact on society. And trying them to convince that they're wrong when they believe this is the word of God. This is ordained by God. Trying to convince them. That's like me trying to convince you black folks that the 10 Commandments in that same Bible that you're reading actually comes from the 42 laws of Ma'at. You were like, no. Me trying to convince you that if you go, according to Dr. John Henry Clark, when you go down and study Egypt and you study, you know, the writings on the walls and hieroglyphics, you basically have the flood stories there. You're like, no, that's the devil. Okay, you just trying to trick me. That's how hard it is. Just like, you know, your grandma still got white Jesus up on the wall. Try to take that picture down and see what you get. And that's the same thing you're gonna run across trying to convince these white Christian nationals who've been brainwashed into these false teachings to keep to believe otherwise. It's just that's part of who they are. You understand? You're not gonna get around. Let's keep listening, man.
People that people come out of.
So you just think they're meant to have babies? That's it. They're just a vessel.
No.
The other aspect of this white Christian nationalism is the patriarchy. And I don't mean men being responsible and working hard. I mean, they literally feel like women are their property. All right. So I want you to listen to what this gentleman is talking about, because along with the first victims of white supremacy or white male patriarchy were white women. Okay. Keep that in mind, from Europe over here to the United States. Keep that in mind. So listen to what this cat is talking about.
Women are the kind of people that people come out of.
So you just think they're meant to have babies? That's it. They're just a vessel.
No, it doesn't take any talent to simply reproduce biologically. The wife and mother, who is the chief executive of the home, is entrusted with 3 or 4 or 5 eternal souls.
I'm here as a working journalist, and I'm a mom of 3.
Good for you.
Look. She like, me too? Does that include me? He's like, holy crap. These people really believe that. Look at this white woman. She's like, what?
Is that an issue?
No, no, it's not automatically an issue.
Christchurch senior pastor Doug Wilson is the leader of a Christian nationalist movement that believes in a patriarchal society where men are dominant and women are expected to submit to their husbands. Josh and Amy Prince, along with their 4 kids, moved from Washington State to Moscow, Idaho, where Wilson's movement is based.
Do you see Amy as your equal?
Yes and no, in the sense that we're both saved by grace. We're absolutely on equal footing, but we have very different purposes, God-given.
But do you see yourself as the head of the household, as the man?
He is the head of our household. Yes, and I do submit to him.
So like moving here
was
ultimately your decision.
Yes.
That's a great
example.
Wilson says in his vision of a Christian society, women as individuals shouldn't be able to vote.
You hear that? Women can't vote. You have no say. So I want you to understand who you're dealing with, right? You can. Look, man. Look, this is not me making this up. This is what's going on out here, man. All right, we'll deal with it in a minute. We're about to get down to the nitty-gritty in a minute, but let's keep listening.
His fellow pastors Jared Longshore and Toby Sumter agree.
In my ideal society, we would vote as households, and I would ordinarily be the one that would cast the vote, but I would cast the vote having discussed it with my household.
But what if your wife doesn't want to vote for the same person as you?
Right. Well, then that's a great opportunity for a good discussion.
There are some who have gone so far as to say that
how that discussion's gonna go. Martha you better. I wonder what's gonna happen.
they want the 19th Amendment repealed.
I would support that.
19th Amendment is the amendment that gives women the right to vote. So this man does not want women the right to vote, and that along with that is going to be the right to practice certain professions. I'm sure that would be Congress, law, judges, anything which holds any semblance of power. They literally want to strip women's rights away. Okay, so understand this is what's really going on. This is where we headed, or this is where people are trying to head. And I'm happy we have white people saying, "Oh hell no, that's crazy."
And I'd support it on the basis that the atomization that comes with our current system is not good for humans.
And Wilson, a veteran himself, is
it's not good. But I wonder how he would define human. That's another thing. Who is and who is not a human in this gentleman's mind?
unapologetic about his view that women shouldn't be in certain leadership or combat roles.
Looking at the leadership page for Christchurch, it's all men. Do you accept women in leadership roles in the church and government?
In the church, no.
Why?
Because the Bible says not to.
Well, that's not what happens in the Bible. Women do lead all the time.
Progressive faith leader Reverend Jennifer Butler is concerned about Wilson's growing influence.
He is rapidly gaining in power. He has hundreds of churches established around the country. They actually literally want to take over towns and cities, and they have access to this administration.
What's that little white girl's name on the internet? What's her name? She had all those black people in London, and then they all fell out with her. I forget her. What's her name? What's her name, man? The little tall, skinny little white girl. What is her name? Y'all know her with the shoulders. The little blonde white girl with the shoulders. She went from having a bunch of black friends, and now she's talking all that rhetoric, that white supremacy. That's why you see, I said, no, I'm good. I didn't go, wasn't trying to hang out. Pearly, this is the stuff she said, strip women's right to vote away. And I mean, you literally have women saying this foolishness. If I had a daughter, and I don't, I have sons, I would not want her to be powerless and subjected to some man, okay, and at his will. Because I know men, and I know how you dudes are, and sometimes the only thing that can put a man in place is another man who wants to see right done. And so you have women who are solely subjected to the authority and power of men, and they're unfair men, and they're not good men. Then, you know, women just become victims. And I'm not cool with that. I don't want to live in a savage society where women are just the victims of men's whim. I'm not cool with that at all. I don't like it. I believe I'm a straight up constitutionalist, and I believe equal rights across the board. everybody can get it. That's what I believe. If you're the best at it, you should do it. Whether we're talking about the military or a CEO or a plumber, you understand? That's where I'm at. I'm a strict 100% pure constitutionalist. I believe it word for word, equal rights across the board. Let's keep listening.
Wilson's highest level connection to the administration is Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth.
It's not organizationally tied to us, but it's the kind of thing we love to see.
For his part, Hegseth has publicly praised Wilson.
Now we're standing on the shoulder.
This is the Department of War, okay? Not the Secretary of Defense. This guy is the Secretary of the Department of War, okay? This is somebody he listens to. This right wing preacher.
There's of a generation later, the Doug Wilsons and the others.
So this is where we at, man. This is all in the administration, man. This is you know, I know it's a lot of people that's like, oh, I didn't know all that. Yeah. I wanted you to pay close attention to this, okay?
Then you would be in a grass hut. Yeah.
You hear what he said? If slavery, in other words, Black Americans should be thankful that Africans sold us into slavery and we ended up over here in the United States having to deal with 256 years of chattel slavery, the grapes, the degradations, we should be happy because otherwise we'd be living in huts. This is what he's saying. And the problem when you have people who don't know history sitting next to these people is that they don't know what to say, okay? Because they don't even have a full grasp of history to truly understand what's going on. But this is their opinion. We should be happy at the degradation that we had to deal with during slavery and Jim Crow right up into right now. Otherwise, we'd be living in huts in Africa.
If slavery never happened, then you would be in a grass hut.
If slavery never happened, white people would have never been able to settle this land because you all have proven consistently that you are too lazy and ill-equipped to do your own work. You tried to get the Native Americans to do it. They kept running off. You tried to bring the Irish over here. You treated them horribly, but they were able to blend in with the other white gentry. So then you figured out, well, we need to get these blacks over here because they live in these sub-Saharan tropical environments and they can sit out there and do the work. Matter of fact, we'll change the science up and say they're more equipped to do it. So, but for the millions of Black people who you sold or purchased from the Africans, because we're not going to let the Africans off, but you definitely did purchase some Africans and brought them over here and you had them work. This country would still be a bunch of swamp, untamed swamp land, which you would not be able to inhabit right now. So let me rephrase that. But for slavery, white people would be living in huts because you'd have stayed over here and starved until you realize this land is not something we can conquer. That's what would have happened, sir. Okay, and that's not me saying that. That's a historical fact. All right, and you can argue, you can Google what America looked like in 1619 and figure out that it wouldn't have worked out very well for you. Okay, let's keep it going.
Yeah. All right. Well, we need reparations. Your reparations are that you get to live in America. You're welcome.
That's what he's saying.
You're welcome.
You get to have the Christian religion.
That's
live
right.
better.
You get to have the Christian religion. Let me say this also. Christianity was in Africa before it ever got to Europe. Christianity was in Africa at least a century before it was in Europe. There is something called the Ethiopian Bible, which instead of having 66 books, it has more books than that. Okay? So here's what you need to understand. See, this is the problem when you let people who are not versed in these conversations, you sitting up there with his leg crossed, and most of you all who they run up on, you don't listen to my channel. No, you don't learn nothing. The reason I do what I'm doing right now is so that you can be equipped for this conversation. Uncle D is not going to be around forever. You understand? But now you understand the arguments and you can counter the arguments, and so you can hit them in the head with these facts. Okay? No, it's not that we had the Christian religion in Africa before they ever had it in Europe. What makes you think we need to be dragged in chains in the belly of ships and brought here to the United States, or what was the colonies of Great Britain, just to get the Christian religion when it was already where we were at in the first place. You see? So that's just factually incorrect. Okay? Let's keep listening.
Better than your ancestors
The
ever would
greatest
have.
moment in history for any brown or black country is the moment that the white man's ships arrive on your shore.
The moment the white man brought the diseases from Europe down to Peru, where there were millions of indigenous people, they literally brought all those ailments. And here's the thing you ought to understand. There's about 12 domesticated animals on the planet. 11 of them are in the European continent. There's only one, the alpaca, which is in South America. It's a domesticated animal. But because Europeans had such a close proximity to these animals, a lot of viruses and diseases and bacteria came from living in proximity to these animals. So because of that, over thousands of years, Europeans developed antiviruses or antigens, I should say, to these natural defenses to these viruses. So Europeans had already been naturally inoculated from the viruses of smallpox, et cetera. It still killed people. But you had these other populations, Africans, people in the New World, they'd never been exposed to these diseases. So the first Europeans show up, they might come back in 100 years and the whole population had been decimated. When they came back to Peru, 90% of the population was there. They didn't win, they didn't conquer the New World. Microscopic organisms killed off the majority of the indigenous population, and all they had to do was come in, and this is in a matter of short time. Imagine 90% of the population disappearing. You don't have warriors, you don't have doctors, you don't have medicine men, you don't have leaders. They're gone. You see? And so now, all you got to do is come in with your muskets and take what they had, gold, wealth, put the rest in slavery. So it wasn't some great feat of military brilliance that conquered the New World of Africa. It was the diseases the Europeans brought with them, which they were immune to at that time because they had been living in close proximity. Did you know the Vikings in their longhouses literally would sleep in the same space with cows? I mean, a cow is like having 10 or 12 space heaters in the same place. That's how they stay warm. And so they lived in close proximity to the animals. And that, as a byproduct, that's how they were able to develop these antigens, natural antigens and defenses to these diseases. I learned that in my historically black university, Grambling State University, biology department. I'm sure you all didn't learn that, so shout out to my HBCU. So again, that's how Europeans conquered the world. That's what happened when they showed up at the shore. They brought diseases with them. Okay, and look, it's the truth. There's a book called I think it's called Guns and Germs. I forget the name of Guns, Bombs, and Germs. I forget. I haven't read it in a long time. Guns and Germs. Look it up. But anyway,
tell you about what black people suffered through after those white men's ships arrived on their shores. They got hundreds of years of enslavement, oppression, abuse, torture, murder, rape. Not only did black former slaves get nothing after emancipation, President Andrew Johnson, a white Southerner, he made certain that white enslavers were made whole. Reparations, but not for former slaves, reparations for rich white slave owners. Mm-hmm. After the Civil War, blacks were kept poor, systematically poor, and with almost zero ability to grow wealth. Thousands of black prisoners were leased by Southern states to former white enslavers in what were called convict leases.
You guys remember when I talked about that? Y'all learned a lot on this broadcast. Remember when we talked about convict leasing? You remember that? Yeah, that's what they did. They got you right back in slavery because remember the 13th Amendment says what? It says slavery is outlawed, but for people who have been basically put in prison. Okay, that's basically what it says. Check it out yourself. Y'all hit the #1 button. And don't forget, if you learn something, I should earn something. Okay, if you learn something, I should earn something. I absolutely know you all didn't know that about, guns, germs, and steel. Let's hit the #1 button. Let's keep it.
Where blacks, again, worked for free while white men made themselves rich again from their labor and upon their broken backs. There were also sharecropping, which grossly exploited black work ethic while allowing the former enslavers to maintain their power and to continue to grow their wealth, their white wealth. Again, ultimately passing that on to future generations of their white descendants. Of course, during this time, there were also Jim Crow laws in place all over the South, which made it illegal for black Americans to occupy the same spaces as whites. Hospitals and bathrooms, private.
Now, I know I have some white folk in here, but here's the thing. Euro Asians and Northern Europeans, in my opinion, just from observation, they're different people. Okay, there's no, I mean, even if you go places like England, because this gentleman is basically saying don't mix all white people with this Western Europeans or colonials. Yeah, well, the reason that they mix that in is because even Italians were never white. They're some of the darkest people in what we call Europe. Okay, and the largest number of the biggest lynching that occurred in Louisiana was the lynching of Italian men who had come down to Europe, come down from Italy to work in New Orleans. And if you ever had a chance to visit New Orleans, you will see, interestingly, that Metairie or white New Orleanian accent sounds very similar to the New York accent and the New York Italian accent. Okay, because the Italians, those white folks in South Louisiana ran the Italians out of South Louisiana with their racism. I want you to keep that in mind. So I'm very aware of that. But see, you all have decided to classify yourself as white. It makes no sense for a European or a South, Eastern European from the Eastern Bloc to consider themselves white. You're not. You're Euro-Asian. And this is why Putin, if you listen to some of the rhetoric coming out of Russia, I think Tucker Carlson had a high-ranking former official with Putin, advisor to Putin, basically said we're drifting away from Western Europe and we're actually getting closer to our Asian or Euro-Asian roots. And that's because you all are a mixed people. You opted to be white. You decided, you gave up your culture to be white, which I think is a loss. You're not white. You're Slavic. You're Sicilian. You're Italian. You're Turkish. You're from Croatia. But you gave up your culture because you accepted this label white so that you can reap the benefits of the social class, the social I guess we call it ethnic, social, racial class system that we have here in the United States. It was a way in which they decided England was able, or they were able to increase the power that they had here in the United States. And I don't want to get too far off the subject, but Spain had colonized what we call Florida at the time. And their thing was, hey, as long as you're Catholic, you can be upwardly mobile. Well, England, which was a tiny off-brand crappy country, when Spain and Portugal were running things, said, no, what we're going to do is we're going to unite people on their whiteness as opposed to their Catholicness. Because remember, the Spanish had just run the Moors out of the Iber Peninsula at the time. And so they were hell-bent on not letting any more of those Moors come back. So they said the only way you can benefit is if you're Catholic. The only way you're going to be able to benefit in the success of this empire is if you're Catholic. So guess what they did? They united on Catholicism. The England, what we call the UK, united on whiteness. And so you came up here, you got that stamp of whiteness. Whether you were Irish, you got treated like trash by the English. Now you're white, you see? And so at least you get a chance to, enjoy the benefits of this white racial social class that we have. But I don't want to get too far off of that. But yeah, you gave up your white, you gave up your culture. You white folks, you don't want us to put you all in the same category, but you call yourself white because you reap a benefit from that, even though you're not. You understand? You're an Italian. You're a slob. You know how people get, you know how you all get treated by each other. White people have their own social structure amongst themselves. Some are not, you're not white enough to some people. Let's keep listening. We're going to keep it pushing. Hit the number one button.
How Christianity is at war with itself. And really, it always has been, right? So we know that most Americans are Christian. It doesn't matter if you are or not. It's just most Americans are Christian.
Yeah.
And a layer below that is most white Christians are Republican. And most black Christians are Democrat. Pretty much the same Bible, right? Same belief in God, Jesus, salvation by faith, and the whole deal, right? But the white Christians in America are supporting Donald Trump. And they're supporting the white nationalism that he's pushing, the racism, all that stuff. They're supporting that. And it doesn't matter if you are evangelical, Catholic, or Mormon. And, you know, someone's going to say, oh, but Mormons aren't Christian. Oh, but Catholics believe the Pope. You know what? None of that matters because they all vote the same. They all vote the same. The 6 Supreme Court justices, all Catholic, they do Donald Trump's bidding. That's their Pope. It doesn't matter what the Pope says. They support him. All the things that government is doing, all the racism, the xenophobia, the homophobia, all that stuff, they support that. And so if you are a Christian and you go to a Christian church, you have a Christian faith leader, you should tell them respectfully, they should be preaching out against this government. Because if they're not, they're ceding all the ground to the preachers and the Christians and the Christian leaders who are supporting Donald Trump, and they're loud about it. And when Donald Trump said that, and J.D. Vance said they're going to start going after liberal organizations and liberal groups, well, that means churches as well. And black people understand this because white people have always attacked our churches because they don't believe in our Christian.
Yeah, but black people are not getting involved in any of this fight going on between white folks. We are resting, sir. Let me remind you that. Dear black people in the chat room, please type "we're resting" in the chat room. This is a fight between whatever you call a liberal, Republican, or whatever. None of our business. Keep listening.
Christianity. That's why we got a slave Bible. That's why they bombed our churches during the civil rights movements. That's why they killed our leaders. That's why the Ku Klux Klan is a Christian organization. Just like Turning Point. All these white nationalist organizations, all these QAnon people, they all say they're Christian. And yet there isn't enough pushback from the other Christians who don't believe what those people believe. They're too quiet. And it's not a time to be quiet.
It's not all white people that are quiet. A lot of white people are speaking up against it, so we don't want to bundle them all in. You see all these videos I put up? They're not that quiet.
Like, you should be so loudly against that. And look, I'm not saying that there aren't any, because you can see clips, mostly of black pastors, but there's some white pastors too that are starting to speak out against Trump and these other Christian white nationalists. But there's not enough. There is not enough. And so I'll go back to my original point, most Americans are Christians, most white Christians.
Shout out to JMC Queen 84 Resting. We got 4 super chats. If you learn something, I should earn something. Thank you so much, JM Queen. Appreciate it. Let's keep it pushing.
Support Donald Trump. Most black Christians do not. There needs to be more of the other side pushing back against the white nationalism and the racism coming out of the White House and white Christianity.
All right, so we're almost finished. I got a couple more videos, and we're gonna get to the actual lesson I want to talk about. Listen to these folks. We're gonna get moving.
So the white evangelical church continues to grieve me so much. There's a battle between those who continue to say that George Floyd was a scumbag and are following the footsteps of Charlie Kirk and into this Charlie Kirk revival that seems to be exploding. And those who say that George Floyd was a child of God and never deserved to be choked to death. It is an ongoing problem with spiritual bypassing. So many opportunities for the church to address the problem of racism, to address the problem of white supremacy, and the church just keeps.
The problem is, see, if you've been brainwashed to believe that black people are the devil or black people look like the devil, then the unaliving of George Floyd makes sense to you, okay? That's what you need to understand. And this is the fundamental difference. People are looking at the same, it's like people are looking at the same picture and seeing two different images. Okay. And this is the thing. This is why I want to try to get Black people who are listening to my page tonight to hear what folk are saying from their own mouth so you can understand who you're dealing with. Fundamentally, these people who've been brainwashed in this particular, I guess, sect of Christianity believe that the Black person is the devil. Isn't it crazy? Somebody type crazy in the chat room. Keep in mind, Jesus was clearly not a white man. Okay, Jesus, Christianity had not even hit. The apostles were the first one to bring Christianity to Europe, and that was 400 years after Jesus was dead. You understand? So that's the type of crazy. So you basically saying that the man who was the central focus of your religion, a brown man, clearly was the face of the devil. And you see why it was so important for them to keep pushing this Jesus was white image, on, even though it cannot be historically accurate. Let's keep listening, family.
Walking by, keeps walking by, points to another problem, thinks it's religious enough to not worry about it. I just talked to somebody in our community this past weekend during a No Kings protest, and she's a woman of color, and she said, Adam, you know what? I've been around racism for a long time. I can handle it.
Now, again, we're not talking about all white churches. We're talking about these white national churches, these white Christian nationalist churches. That's who we're talking about. So if you're a white person and you're offended, I don't teach that in my church. This is not talking to you. Okay, I'm educating you too. Shout out to Intricate Tangle. Thank you for all you do, Dennis Spurling. We resting. Shout out to Yaya's kids. Appreciate you teaching all you do. So look, don't get all in the uproar. Okay, you're listening and you're learning. Okay, that's what you're doing. You're listening and you're learning.
However, this is different. I said, how so? She said, it is as bad as it's been since the 60s, or as the worst it's been since the 60s. And this whole narrative reminds me of what the filmmaker Ken Burns said about how the North lost a critical part of the Civil War. What did they lose? They lost the narrative. It was the South who gained the narrative. They were the ones who began to make heroes out of racist Confederate generals. Confederacy, where slavery was distinguished by rape and separation of families and cruel punishment. And they were able to turn that around and then begin to make heroes out of Confederate generals. They broke promises, and the narrative just spun out of control until you ended up with segregation and Jim Crow laws and lynchings. Mm-hmm. And here we are in 2025. We have an administration that is full-blown into white supremacy. The official X account of the State Department posted the one word remigrate, which is a white nationalist word. It's a word that says we will deport all non-white immigrants, black immigrants, and brown immigrants, and we will welcome white refugees, like those they claim are suffering, wrongly claim, another lie, are suffering in South Africa. It's the mold spore that is broken loose, and it is suffocating and killing our democracy. And where's the church? The church continues to walk right on by. You cannot address this stuff in white evangelical spaces. They will twist the narrative. They'll use the word woke as a weapon. They'll use scripture as a weapon. They'll do anything to humble themselves and just say, wait, 1 minute. Is this a problem? Should we deal with it? Of course we should. My prayer is that we will.
So, I'm sure there are some people who are uncomfortable with this conversation, but it's an uncomfortable conversation to have. And if you're not uncomfortable, that means there's something wrong with you. But running away from the conversation is why we got in the place in the first place. Stay here. Sit here and keep watching and take your talking to. Okay? Bruce Young, 565. Just Sit there and take your talking to. All right, we're still looking at videos. We got one more after this. Y'all listen to what I believe is brother. Is that Kwame Ture? No, that's not Bennett. No, that's the old school Black Panther brother.
You said earlier about Jesus not being white. That's it. Okay, Stuart. Your first question. If you would read the Bible, Stuart, you would see that the very first country mentioned in the Bible is Ethiopia, Genesis 2, verse 13. Mm-hmm. Depending upon the version of the Bible you have, this Ethiopia might be spelled Cush, C-U-S-H, or Cush, K-U-S-H. If you will look quickly in an authoritative source, you will see Cush, whether it's C or a K, is the ancient name for Ethiopia. If you will read properly the Bible, Europe is not mentioned in the Bible until the very end. If you know the slightest thing about the life of Jesus Christ, you will know that when Jesus Christ was in trouble, it was to Africa his mother took him. It was there that she hid him. For 10 years, he grew there physically, spiritually, and morally. If you would look properly at the life of Jesus Christ, you will see that he never saw Europe. He never saw it. His disciples never saw Europe. The religion of Christianity was spread to Europe by the apostles who came long after the disciples. Not only that, it took 400 years after the death of Jesus Christ for Christianity to be consolidated in Europe. 400 years after his death. If you would look properly, you would see the first church in the world was in Africa. The first monastery in the world was in Africa. The very intellectual development of the church was a result of Africans. St. Augustine ain't nothing but an African. Consequently, when we say Jesus Christ is not white, we mean exactly that. He could be just about any color, but the one color he definitely could not be is white. As a matter of fact, if you will do the slightest research, this white Jesus that you see they have hanging everywhere is nothing but the uncle of the artist who painted the picture. What's all this Bethlehem and all that business? Yes, but that's not Europe. No. That's not Europe. That's Palestine and Africa. It's not. Jesus Christ never went to Europe. No, he never saw it. If he did, of course, there is some question.
How many of you all knew that Jesus Christ never went to Europe? How many of you all knew that? How many of you all thought that Jesus Christ white or could be white? Just by a show of hands. Let me know. Okay.
Question as to whether or not he died on the cross. After his death, some people say he didn't die, and after his death he might have gone, but he certainly never went to Europe while he was preaching. He never saw it, and neither did his disciples. And he spent 10 years, and even in the Bible says that he had hair like the wool of a lamb. That's what the Bible says. He could not be white. It's impossible, and Christianity did not grow up. Christianity is not authentic to Europe. It's not. It entered Europe from the outside. As a matter of fact, one of the bloodiest histories that mankind has ever seen was to consolidate Christianity inside of Europe. Here's where you had the gladiators.
Did you all know that? Are you guys familiar with? Let me go ahead and make some people even more angry. Are you all familiar with the Norse religions? One of the common characters is Thor and Odin. Loki, are you familiar with that? I learned that the whole story of Thor and Odin and Ragnarok was actually Christians who came in and said, yeah, they literally made that whole story of Ragnarok up and the end of the world and the new beginning, so they could bring more people who, the Vikings, who or the Norse people who worshipped, Odin as the Allfather. They brought that in, and so that they could get more of them to become Christians. Because remember, Christianity took over Northern Europe. I guess it's around 900 AD or so. So in order to try to get people to come on in, the same thing they did with Africans, they kind of, Santeria, they kind of brought Catholicism and they meshed that with their spiritual beliefs. And that's the way in which we get, like, for instance, we have the winter solstice and they say, oh no, this is Christmas, you see? So they had people celebrating holidays, and it fell on the same day that they would celebrate their normal indigenous holidays. So, people are like, all right, well, we'll just call it Christmas from now on, okay, instead of the winter solstice. Easter is another one of those pagan holidays that was co-opted. So just keep that in mind. All right, let's keep going.
It's men fighting lions and everything possible to crush it. If Elridge Cleaver is a Christian, then to me, one cannot be a Christian and not fight injustice. Jesus Christ went into a well, violated the Sabbath day to take a lamb out of the well. I cannot see how Christians can see injustice and not fight it. If Elridge Cleaver is a Christian, then he must indeed be fighting against injustice. Not only that, if he knows anything about Christianity, the very beginnings of Christianity was communal. It was communalism. If you will read the Apostles' Acts in John, you will see here they tell the people when they join the church to sell all your goods and come and live with everybody in a communal manner. To have, if you see all their food, even the story of Jesus Christ being able to feed the multitudes with fish and 5 loaves of bread. This is nothing but communism, bringing all of them together and among themselves what they have, equally sharing it. So consequently, even the very beginnings of the church is based in communism. When he says that he uses Christianity against communism, he has neither comprehension of Christianity nor of communism.
Let's keep looking. We got one more video. I want you to check out this lady. She's very popular. I like what she has to say. Take a look. She's actually a history teacher. I believe she's a history teacher. I'll be incorrect. Let's do this. Y'all hit the number 1 button. Make sure you can hear it clear. Let me know.
Have not just been supported by white supremacy, they have served as its headquarters. I know you don't want to hear that. They have taught white people that oppression is godly and that power belongs to us by divine right. After the civil rights movement, powerful white people, men, saw that their grip was slipping. Black people were winning court cases. Poor people were organizing. Women were demanding rights. How dare we? LGBTQ people were coming out of their closets, and the foundations of white male dominance were cracking. So they thought, what can we use that no one will question? In 1979, Jerry Falwell founded the Moral Majority. He said it was about championing family values. That was a lie. The real trigger was that the IRS had begun revoking tax exemptions for whites-only Christian schools. Those whites-only schools were created specifically to avoid integration. Falwell's own school, Liberty Christian Academy, was one of them. The platform of the Moral Majority ended up getting built around the issue of abortion. Although that wasn't the original plan, they basically test drove different topics to see which ones would resonate the most with the audience they needed to capture, which was white Americans, white Christian Americans. It had everything to do with maintaining the right to discriminate, yet still enjoy government benefits. This guy named Paul Weyrich, who was a conservative political strategist, he teamed up with Falwell to build a political base. He admitted that abortion had not really motivated white evangelicals until it became politically useful. Their real grievance was losing control over who could sit in their classrooms, walk into their churches, and live in their neighborhoods. Once they realized that abortion could mask their racial panic, they made that their headline issue. They built a movement that turned pulpits into propaganda platforms. Sunday services became political strategy sessions. You know, that's illegal. You're not supposed to be able to do that at a church if you're getting tax exemption. Ministers told
you're supposed to be apolitical in church, or you risk the chance of interfering with your nonprofit church tax exemption, but people don't care.
White families, that their enemies were not the wealthy elites exploiting their labor. They were not the politicians cutting their wages and stealing their pensions. The churches pointed to the poor, the black, the brown, the queer, the immigrant. Those people are the ones that are taking food out of your children's plate. They told white people they were being persecuted every time they were asked to share. And yes, I understand what it means for me to say this out loud. I know what it means to say that the church, something which is so sacred to so many, has been a central engine of the immoral institution of white supremacy. I know this will upset people. The white church has stood on the wrong side of every fight for justice in this country. Every one. During slavery, it defended human ownership. During Jim Crow, it defended lynching and segregation. Christian church members attended lynchings and brought their children to steep them in that evil. During the civil rights movement, it defended denying benefits to black people. During the rise of Trump, it defended cruelty in the name of religious liberty, as if Trump has a clue. Some churches resisted, yes. There are liberal churches who have a strong history of being on the right side.
Yeah, and the Quakers. Let's not forget the Quakers, who are a group of very, very white people. It seems like they were the first abolitionists that I heard about through history. So, let's keep that in mind. Hit the number 1 button.
Of these issues, but most didn't. Most chose comfort. Even now, white churches help elect leaders who lie, steal, incite violence. They wage war on education. They call justice wokeness as an insult. They are consuming a message that keeps them at the center with the elite in their minds. They choose white power over compassion, over empathy. One share shows you care about setting the record straight. Please share. Next time, I am going to talk about how Donald Trump did not hijack this system. He was groomed into it.
All right, so I appreciate you guys for hanging in there. That's the video section to kind of lay the foundation. And now I want to kind of get more into the meat of it. You are going to learn something. And I want you guys to feel free to, subscribe to the channel if you hadn't already. So here's the thing. Make sure you not only subscribe, but hit the like button. I'm marching towards 100,000. I try to give you things. I try to give people substance. Okay. And I try to do that because I do this for posterity. I just feel like this is necessary work, and I want to put it all in one place. You hear what the people say. Now you're going to hear what I have to say. I invite you to disagree with me. What I put forth is quite well researched, and it's pretty standard stuff. It's not anything people are going to, teach you in universities unless you get deep into the classes. And, and the truth is most folks don't want to spend time teaching the public. They just, you all are the public, and nobody's going to take the time to teach you this. This is stuff you have to learn independently. But nevertheless, if you learn something, I should earn something. You don't owe me anything, but I am working to try to help educate the masses about this. And you can take this information and do with it what you want. Now, that being the case, since we got that out the way, all this brings us to, or should I say it like this? You hear people calling out the hypocrisy directly on these videos, and pastors backing the same ideology. Okay. You hear about what's going on with the ICE raids, because this is done under that same white nationalist identity. We're justified in God to do it. And like I said, you hear pastors backing mass enforcement. You hear people dying in some of these detention camps. It was just one that happened today. And folk are brushing it off like it's unfortunate, but it's necessary. Okay, you hear a lot of racial profiling framed as moral duty, borders treated like sacred lines, and suffering treated like discipline. And all of it's wrapped in this Christian language. People feel morally justified. Okay, but none of this is new. Christianity has been used this way before. It was used to defend slavery. It was used to defend segregation. It was used to defend colonialism. And at every one of those moments, there were also Christians using the same Bible to condemn those systems. And that split isn't accidental. It goes all the way back to the 18th and 19th century, when power realized religion could be bent just enough to make exploitation feel righteous. And when I say power, I'm talking about the elites who want to keep you poor people Somebody type you poor people, to keep you poor people at your throat, at each other's throat. Okay? And that's the part people don't want to deal with. What's happening now isn't theology, it's cover. A faith built on mercy and humility and sacrifice and care for the stranger is being twisted into justification for control. Christianity stops functioning as a moral compass. It starts functioning as a shield, not a belief system, a badge, not a call for conscience, a camouflage for power. And once that happens, everything flips. Cruelty gets framed as order. Suffering gets framed as necessity. Targeting gets framed as responsibility. And Christianity, or should I say Christian language, doesn't soften the policy, it sanctifies it. And notice something important. This version of Christianity never punches up. Okay? It never challenges the elites. It never challenges the people in authority. It never challenges power. It never demands sacrifice from those at the top. It always points downward at you poor people. Somebody type you poor people in the chat room. It always justifies harm done to outsiders. And that's how you know you're not looking at faith, you're looking at ideology. And this is how Christianity gets absorbed into the machinery of this white ethno-state dream, okay? It becomes the moral, if we just had a country full of white people, everything would be great. That's the lie they're selling to you poor people, as if this country was ever just a white ethno-state. It never was. But it becomes the moral soundtrack for mass deportation, and it gives radicalized, or should I say it racializes the enforcement. You see, it racializes it, and it allows people to say God wills it, instead of saying the quiet part out loud, this benefits us. And once Christianity is repurposed that way, it becomes unusable. It's disposable, it's political, and churches become symbols. Pastors become validators, and the faith itself becomes a tool, not something to live by, but something to deploy. Shout out to Torrin Jones. So look, before we go any further, we have to be clear about something. This isn't about whether someone is personally religious. It's not about church attendance. It's not about immigration policy. It's about how power has always used religion, or should I say how the elites have always used religion to justify hierarchy, and how that pattern keeps repeating itself. And once you understand that, the next question becomes unavoidable. How did religion that preaches the universal humanity and dignity espoused by a Jewish man of color in the Middle East get turned into a moral defense for racial domination in the first place? And to answer that, we have to go back, not to modern politics, but to history. And here's where the real story begins. See, now we have to deal with the part that gets wrapped in scripture, because this isn't where a lot of people, this is where they hide. So this so-called Christian justification for racism isn't faith, it's camouflage. It's a way to dress power up as righteousness and cruelty as order. And Christianity in this country has been used like this before. It was used to justify slavery. It was used to justify segregation. It was used to justify colonialism. And all of this is documented history. Slaveholders quoted the Bible. Segregation has quoted the Bible. Politicians have quoted the Bible while passing laws that brutalize Black people, indigenous people, and every other person of color. And at the same time, I should say, you had abolitionists and civil rights leaders were quoting the very same Bible to condemn those systems. And that contradiction isn't new. It's been here since the 18th century. What's happening now is just the latest version. Shout out to Chris Barber. You see pastors blessing ICE raids. You saw what Don Lemon, he was in there because the damn one of the head pastors was the local administrator for ICE up there in Minnesota, and they wanted to confront him on that. the pastor, you see? And so you hear religious leaders talk about law and order while families are torn apart. You hear suffering framed as necessary, detention framed as discipline, and brutality framed as obedience to God. That should tell you everything you need to know when a religion built around mercy, humility, and care for the stranger is used to justify domination, something that has gone completely off the rails. And see, this isn't theology, it's politics with a cross on it. And Christianity at its core does not preach ethnic purity. It does not preach racial hierarchy. It does not preach state violence against the vulnerable. But when people want power without accountability, religion becomes useful. It gives moral cover. It lets people say, God wills this. God wants this. Instead of admitting, hey, you know what? This is something that just benefits us, and we're just going to use this religion to justify it. And other thing, notice who this version of Christianity always protects. It never challenges power, never confronts injustice, never demands sacrifice from those at the top. It always points downward at you poor people. Somebody type you poor people in the chat room. And it always excuses harm done to outsiders, whether we talk about black people or immigrants. And see, that's ideology. You see, what we're watching is Christianity being repurposed as a political identity, not as a moral one, which is what it was intended for. You see, and it becomes a badge of belonging. It's a way to say who counts and who doesn't. And once that happens, it stops being about belief altogether and starts being about control. And see, this is why Christian nationalism keeps showing up alongside racism and patriarchy and authoritarianism. It's not accidental, it's structural. And when people feel dominance slipping, guess what? They reach for institutions that promise certainty and hierarchy and obedience, and they weaponize it. So let's call it what it is. This version of Christianity isn't about God. It's about power. It's not about salvation. It's about control. And it collapses the moment it's measured against the very values it claims to defend. Now, the question we have to ask ourselves is why the Christian nation myths fuels this white ethno-state fantasy, okay? And we need to talk about why this idea that the United States was founded as a Christian nation plays such a central role in the white country or white ethno-state fantasy, because it's not accidental and it's not harmless. First, the myth provides ideological justification for exclusion. Okay, that's number one. And white nationalist movements latch on to that claim that America was founded as a Christian nation because it gives their agenda a sense of sacred legitimacy. Okay, now if America was divinely ordained as a Christian country, then their view only certain people, specifically white Christians, are supposed to belong here, right? Makes sense, right? And everyone else becomes an outsider or a threat or a temporary guest to be used and discarded in the name of God, you see? And that belief sits at the core of what scholars call white Christian nationalism, an ideology that fuses religious identity with national belonging and treats America as a chosen society that must be defended from outsiders. And in that worldview, Christian doesn't simply mean belief in Jesus. It means a very specific version of what they call Christianity, tied to white cultural dominance. And that's why this myth becomes such a convenient tool for resisting diversity and demographic change. And any challenge to that white dominance can be framed as an attack on the nation's supposed Christian foundation. Why did all this pop up? Shout out to Sonjak 9694. Why did all this pop up? Because white folk are losing their numbers here in the country. They're looking no longer be a dominant group. They're actually becoming a plurality, which means they'll be the biggest of the minority groups, but they won't be the majority in numbers. Okay, so it's convenient. Somebody type convenient in the chat room. It's convenient. Just like Christianity was used for slavery, it was convenient to justify it. It made them feel better. Now, the second point Christian nationalism and this racial anxiety are deeply intertwined, and researchers consistently find overlap between white racial identity and Christian nationalist beliefs. And for many people pushing this narrative, saying that the United States was a Christian nation isn't really about theology. It's a signal that that political power and cultural authority should or must remain in the hands of white Protestants rooted in this nostalgic version of Anglo-Protestant dominance. Somebody type WASP in the chat room. WASP, WASP, White Anglo-Saxon Protestant. Type that in the chat room. Okay? And that connection matters because it means calls to restore a Christian nation, you know, and that doesn't stay abstract. They turn it into arguments for racial hierarchy and exclusion and control. And studies show that people who strongly endorse Christian nationalist statements are also more likely to oppose racial and cultural pluralism and to support policies that reinforce this social dominance. Okay, that's just what they say. All right, and the third thing is this myth rises most strongly when people feel threatened. What do I mean? Belief in Christian nationalism spikes during periods of social change or when immigration increases. You see what happened when Barack Obama showed up on the scene. The white right made a comeback. Tea Party morphed into MAGA. Okay, and here we are. Whatever your political leanings are, I know there's some black people who supported Trump, but we still have to speak the truth to each other. Just because you benefit from some of these racist policies doesn't mean that you can't acknowledge that they're racist in their origin. You understand? So we're gonna keep it 100 on this page, or keep it a buck. Now, the other thing, when you have economic structure shift, or when cultural norms begin to evolve, whether we talk about LGBT, we have the influx of this AI technology, which is threatening a lot of people's jobs. Okay, of course, we know Biden opened the floodgate and let millions of people come up through the southern border. And so now here we are. We got this pushback in the name of Christian nationalism. And it's these moments that we're living with right now that evoking the idea of a Christian a founding of this country. It becomes a rallying cry. And what do they say? Take our country back. You see? And even when that story misrepresents the history, that's what they're hollering. Okay? Now, that pattern is especially important when you look at this white ethno-state thinking, this white country. You've heard them say that, right? White country, white country. Even people like Nick Fuentes, the Hispanic, he's a Hispanic Nazi or something like that, right? His dad is Mexican. I mean, think about that. But nevertheless, these moments usually start with fear, whether it's real or perceived, about the loss of status. You know, because white folk like, hey, man, not all white people, but a lot of them like, man, if there's more of them here, they might treat us like we treated them. And that would be terrible, even though most black people have no interest in doing that at all. At all. We really just want to be left alone. Okay? Y'all won't leave us alone, and that's why we still at it, you know. But, you know, nevertheless, you know, they try to reach to the origin of this story to try to justify reclaiming power, claiming that America was founded on both Christian and white, and that's the story that they're offering, even though that doesn't even add up historically. White Christian nationalism is not the same thing as Christianity. That's the other thing you need to understand. And this distinction matters. Christianity is a religion. Christian nationalism is a political ideology. All right? It's not simply patriotism plus faith. That's what they want to tell you. It's the merging of American identity with specific religious identity, and then using that combination to argue for political dominance and priority. That's why scholars consistently warn the Christian nationalists, you heard all those people, that rhetoric overlaps with this anti-immigrant sentiment and racial animus and these rigid patriarchal views. These people had a way. Women will go back to being no votes, no job, sitting at home. So all women, not just white women, all women. Okay? And the thing is, people who agree with this ideology, right, are the ones that's more likely to deny that there exists systematic racism, and are often willing to support the very exclusionary racist policies that they say don't exist. Think about that. And here's some historical reality that folk need to deal with. The idea that the United States was founded as a Christian nation is a myth, not a constitutional fact. The Constitution is secular. It established no national religion. It bans religious tests for office, and it reflects the founders' explicit opposition to government control over religion. And that legal foundation directly contradicts the narrative used by these Christian nationalists and the white supremacists that go along with them to claim that they have some sort of divine approval or exclusion. Because look, that the myth doesn't match the historical record. It functions less as truth and more as a symbol. Is really more of a rallying point used for political mobilization and identity and resistance to change in society. That's what it's about. All right. And that's why the whole idea of Christian nation sounds good to most Christians, right? But the claim matters. The claim matters so much to this idea of having this white country, or this was supposed to be a white country. Without it, there's no moral cover and no sacred justification, just basically raw power. It is because I say so. Now, this is where everything starts to come locked together. Once you understand how Christianity gets stripped of its moral core and repurposed as a tool of control, the next move becomes obvious. Power doesn't just want enforcement, it wants justification. It wants a story big enough, old enough, and sacred enough to make domination feel righteous instead of just naked power. And see, this is where the conversation about law and order comes in. It doesn't stop at borders. It doesn't stop at enforcement. It moves straight into mythology, into the origin story, and into the claims about what America was supposed to be. You understand? All right. Basically, they said it was God himself. Okay. And this is that white nationalism. This is where white nationalism finds its spiritual language. The claim that America was founded as a Christian nation isn't just historically wrong. It's strategically useful. It gives it gives that halo, that racial hierarchy halo. It turns political dominance into moral destiny, and it allows people to urge that demographic change, you know, that's inconvenient. They want to fight against that. You understand? So here's the thing. When America was founded, the truth is this: many of the European immigrants who came to America, to the United States, were shaped by centuries of religious conflict in Europe, including these prolonged and violent battles and struggles between the Protestants and the Catholics. In just one of those conflicts, which was called the 30 Years' War in Central Europe, millions of people died. And in some regions, as much as 1/3 of the population was lost because of this religious/political war. You got to look at the history of Europe, man. These people have fought each other for thousands of years. France against Germany, and Germany was a bunch of independent states for long up until, I believe, the early late 19th century. Okay. So they was fighting with each other all the time. But nevertheless, the people who founded this country were deeply aware of that history that they had just come from in Europe, that European experience. They had family memory. They had an entitlement, or should I say they had writings about it, because what they had seen and studied, because of that, they intentionally formed a system of government, what we have here, with safeguards against religious control of the state. And so it was done so that people could worship freely without government interference. You guys are very familiar with the First Amendment. It's called the Establishment Clause. The Constitution, the first thing they thought about, the Establishment Clause, or as we say, the right to free speech. Really, it's the right to worship your own religion or not have the government infringe upon your religion. That was the First Amendment to the Constitution. That's the first thing they came up with. Okay? And you want some facts? Check this out. George Washington, the man on the $1 bill, first president, he explicitly called religious tolerance. He called for it, and he warned against religious intolerance in his farewell address and many other writings. The second president of the United States, John Adams, he signed and he proclaimed the Treaty of Tripoli, which ended the conflict with Tripoli. I know there was somebody here in the chat room who said, yeah, my ancestors were slaves in Tripoli. Yeah, white slaves. Okay? But nevertheless, that treaty ratified unanimously by the United States Senate states that the government of the United States of America is not in any sense founded on the Christian religion. That was the second president of the United States, John Adams. Okay? So now when these people say that, America is a Christian nation, that's not what the president said. That's not what John Adams said. That's what you heard what George Washington said. George Washington called for religious tolerance and warned against religious intolerance. Now let's talk about the third and fourth president, Thomas Jefferson and James Madison. Both of them actively opposed the government establishment of religion because they believed that using tax dollars to support churches interfered with individuals' his conscience, and it could corrupt that religion. The minute you start throwing money in it, the government's funded, one religion gets funded over another, it basically becomes a government-sanctioned religion. Even Benjamin Franklin, the man on the $100 bill, and a participant in the Constitutional Convention, the one I told you about where all them youngsters was drunk, young white men around there drunk, drinking ale, hanging out in the heat, no air conditioning. Benjamin Franklin warned against entangling government and religion and viewing sectarian conflict as a serious threat to national unity, which is what we have now. And where did he learn that from? He learned that from the history of Europe, that long history of religious wars. So this is what the founding fathers of this country said, okay? This is what the founding fathers, look it up. Be mad at me if you want to, I don't care. This was never supposed to be a Christian nation, according to the founding fathers, all of whom were white men, landowners. Now, the thing is, we have to understand why these European religious wars matter. So let me say this, from the 1500s through the 1600s, Europe was repeatedly torn apart by these religious wars. The Catholics fighting the Protestants, state-backed churches persecuting people, dissenters, governments using religious authority to justify violence and repression. Okay, and these were not minor disputes or isolated uprisings. This was continent-wide. All these people were fighting each other. I challenge each and everybody on this internet, Al Gore's internet. Everybody on Al Gore's internet, go to Wikipedia, Google, go to European wars, scroll all the way down there at the bottom and look at the hundreds of European wars that happened. Those are just the ones that are documented. Most of those are religious wars. It was continent-wide. And it didn't last a couple of years. It lasted for generations. Imagine your father, your grandfather, your grandson, your brother, everybody's been to war over religion. It reshaped whole societies. Religion was not simply a matter of personal belief. It was enforced by law. And it was backed by armies, and it was tied directly to political power. This is why the founders of this country said, no, we're not going to do that over here. It'll tear our country apart. And so let's talk about the 30 Years' War. It became the clearest and most devastating example of this dynamic. When governments attempted to impose religious conformity, the result was mass death, famine, displacement, and the breakdown of civil order. Here's the thing you got to understand. In order to have a cohesive culture, some things are required. You got to speak the same language. You got to have, you have to worship the same God in order that you can have the same belief system. And anytime you have an influx of outsiders with different language, different cultural beliefs, different religious beliefs, you have disunity. This is the situation that foundational Black Americans are dealing with. We have to get on code because a lot of these black immigrants from these other countries are not. They don't speak the same language. They don't have the same experiences. They might call themselves Christian, but they ain't Southern Baptists like many of us. I'm just saying. Okay? So it was in the government's interest, in order to keep everybody unified, we need to impose not only the same language, but religious conformity. And they were willing to do it by force. You had entire regions of people just depopulate, just unalive them all. They suffer from economic collapse, and at that point, you know, political authority weakened because of this war. And that war, that 30 years war in Europe, it demonstrated in brutal terms that when the state claims the power to decide religious truth, religious disagreement becomes a justification for unlimited violence. And this is what the founders of this country realized, like, nah, we're not having that over here. And so by the time our country was formed, this history was well known and it was deeply studied. Okay? Look, you had the enlightened thinkers amongst us repeatedly pointed to Europe's religious wars as evidence that mixing religion and state power was not only unjust, but it was downright dangerous to the sanctity and unity of any nation. And they argued that government enforcement of religion corrupts faith, it hardens divisions, and it turns theology and disagreement into political war. And so, you know, the American founders, we didn't fight England just to turn around and end up having to fight each other over our belief system. And the American founders, we didn't need, our founders didn't need to live through these wars personally to understand the consequences. And they were highly educated men. They had studied in Europe, they'd studied European history, they'd studied philosophy, they'd studied political theory in depth. They read about the religious conflicts that had devastated Europe. They observed how state churches suppressed dissent and understood how easily religious authority could be weaponized by those in power. And that historical knowledge shaped their thinking and directly influenced their decision to build a system with which the government would not control religion and religion would not control the government. That's why we got the First Amendment of the United States Constitution. Are you bored? Let me know if you all are bored. Maybe I can go back to talking about Nicki Minaj and Don Lemon. Okay? But I hope you're not. I hope you're learning something. So when these people on the white right say this was the founders meant to be this to be a white nation, that's a lie. That's a lie out of the mouths of the own founders. Okay? Now again, you need to understand the founders of the United States of America, they weren't anti-religious people. Many of them were very religious, they were Christian, in fact. Okay, some were deists, some were skeptics. Maybe they held some unconventional beliefs. I could imagine they would. If you got slaves on one hand and you're a religious person on the other, you might have to separate your religions just so you can maintain your own sanity. But here's the thing you have to understand. What united the founders of the United States, what united them was not hostility toward religion, but opposition towards government-enforced religion. They had seen both historically and intellectually what happens when the state takes sides in matters of belief. Their concern was not that religion existed, but that political power could be used to control it. And their objective was not to suppress Christianity or diminish its influence in society. Instead, it was to protect the freedom for everyone, okay? Christians of different denominations, members of other faiths, and those who chose not to believe at all. They understood that genuine faith can't be coerced, and that belief backed by government force cease to be belief, and it becomes compliance. And see, this distinction is critical. Religious freedom means people are free to believe, worship, or not worship, according to their own conscience. And they can do it without having fear of being punished or others being favored or being excluded by the state. It assumes that religion thrives best when it's voluntary, not imposed. And so a Christian nation in a political sense would require the government to endorse Christianity and privilege it over the other beliefs, or enforce its doctrines through law. And that necessarily means other beliefs are treated as second class or illegitimate. You see? And the founders rejected that model. And they rejected it because they wanted religion to remain free. And by refusing to give the government authority over faith, they were able to preserve space for religion to exist without coercion or political manipulation. And in that view, separating religion from state power was not a threat to faith. It was the best protection for faith. Okay? I mean, you got these leading figures. You got Washington, you got Adams, you got Jefferson, you got Madison, you got Franklin. All right? These are the founding fathers, founding generation. They were clear and they were consistent on the issue. And they differed in personal beliefs. They still shared a common understanding that the government and religion should not be fused. George Washington emphasized tolerance and national unity. Okay, he deliberately avoided any call for national religion. And in his public address and private correspondence, he made it clear that the legitimacy of the new nation depended on respecting everybody's diverse religions and avoided the kind of sectarian divisions that had torn other societies apart. I told you about John Adams and Tripoli, his Treaty of Tripoli. Okay, the United States government was not founded on Christianity. The treaty clarifies that. The Treaty of Tripoli, look it up. This wasn't controversial at the time. It was ratified unanimously by the Senate and signed by the president. All the senators agreed. Or at least they signed off on it. Thomas Jefferson. You've heard these names before. He believed that the state support of religion violated a person's conscience and ultimately weakened the genuine faith. See, for Thomas Jefferson, true belief could only exist where the state had no authority over it. James Madison, Benjamin Franklin, they understood what this religious conflict did to Europe. Okay? Because those governments have repeatedly used it to justify these power struggles and violence. And so these were not fringe, isolated views, family. They were mainstream among the architects of the American government and judicial system and directly informed the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. The separation of church and state was not an afterthought. It was deliberate, it was purposeful, and it's the foundation of this republic. Now, the question you have to ask yourself, why do people still keep trying to convince us that this was supposed to be a Christian nation? Okay? Why is that? And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take a quick break. I'm gonna give you all an opportunity to go to the restroom or whatever you have to do. All right, but in the meantime, y'all make sure y'all hit the #1 button, and I will be right back. And look, make sure you subscribe to the channel, family. Make sure you subscribe if you haven't already. I appreciate it if you would do it right now. Take the time. Don't be a hate watcher. Do it right now. You're learning something. And if you learn something, I should earn something. Okay? Y'all hit the #1 button. I will be right back in a few minutes. Okay? And I'm going to keep showing the world what black
you were tuned in to one of the best black men advocated podcasts on YouTube. Show some love for the one and only black professional. Keep it real.
And be Superman.
You would tune in to Dennis Podcast. Keep it moving, mama's favorite of the lovely ladies. All these YouTube men dressed for the occasion, even though he on the internet. Intellect, beat you up in court and probably fist to fist. Been around the world, high value. Girl, you can't relate it. Been debated, Godfather endorsed, scared. Kevin said it. Independent black businessman, yeah, he hood related. Probably wouldn't know a big bass. Appreciate it. Talk to me and I talk back. He can litigate it. Walk with me as we talk facts. He opinionated, saying true. He not only talking, checking court dockets. Only YouTuber putting real money in my pockets. LA back to Houston, taking off. Recent rockets, Big O in the middle. I'm Elijah, while let's get it poppin'. Championships, we want championships. Beat the manuscript, loyalty and brotherhood. Watch out who you're hanging with.
All they want is comfortable oppression. We'll feed them false hope.
Hit that subscribe button. Yeah, y'all know what it is. Dennis Spurling Podcast. One of the realest. One of the realest in the game. Let's get to it. All my lovely ladies, y'all know what it is. Show some love. Yeah, hit that like button. Subscribe right now. On our way to 100,000. Let's get it.
When we're saying that, we're going to give them too much clout.
You would tune in to the one, if not the best, on these YouTube streets. We call him Dennis Spurling. You sit back and hate watch, clocking everything he do and say, but you yelling Dennis Spurling. Show some love, ain't enough going round for a black man putting it down. We talking Dennis Spurling. Taking over 2025, ain't no lies. Pull up, tell all of your guys we watching Dennis Spurling. You tune in to the one, if not the best, on these YouTube streets. We call him Dennis Spurling. You sit back and hate watch, clocking everything he do and say, but you yelling Dennis Spurling. Show some love, ain't enough going round for a black man putting it down. We talking Dennis Spurling. Taking over 2025, ain't no lies. Pull up, tell all of your guys we watching Dennis Spurling.
You woke up this morning and you disrespected a that you absolutely never met in your life. You a sucker ass innocent man.
This is Uncle D, and as I always said this time, I'm out.
Almost to 10,000 followers. I want to say thank you to you guys. You know, God has something in store for me, and I'm going to continue to say yes.
Smooth operator. Come on, everybody. Smooth operator. Smooth operator. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Welcome back, everybody. Welcome to the broadcast. We are going to finish up what we're doing. I hope everybody has enjoyed the broadcast. I hope you've learned something. If you've learned something, I should earn something. Again, we started off talking about some messy stuff going on in between Nicki Minaj and Don Lemon. But we're learning something tonight, and I want you all to understand what's going on and basically why we're doing this and why I think it's important. You know, this is basically a warning that I'm giving you guys about something that is not on most people's radar as you go about your life, listening and just going about your business and enjoying life. This is where the political world is heading, you know, here in the United States. So just be mindful of what you see around, and I hope we're able to bring some clarity. Now, that being the case, let's just go ahead and continue forth. We'll try to wrap this up. We're probably going to shoot a little bit past the 3-hour time period. I'd like to try to get out of here and before that, but I think it's necessary, and we'll just continue forth until we get it done. But we won't be here too much longer. But again, if you learned something, I'd appreciate your letting me know by helping me earn something. But that being the case, I want to give a big shout out to everybody who's in here, all my guys from the wrench mob, all my dudes from the wrench mob, make sure you hit the #1 button. And I need to give out some more wrenches because we had a little troll invasion over the past few days, and my wrench mob is getting a little lazy. Y'all not doing y'all job, okay? But either way, let's go ahead and continue. So we're going to continue where we left off at before the break. I hope you had a good break. Why does this myth persist that the United States or America was founded as a Christian nation? And it endures for several reasons, none of which are rooted in the constitutional architecture of the United States, as I pointed out. Okay, but one persistent source of confusion lies in the colonial religious practice. Okay, so prior to independence, the colonies exhibited a wide variation in their approaches to religion. Some maintained established churches, others permitted limited dissent, and still others actively persecuted religious minorities. They will whoop up on you. Okay, don't come over here with that Catholicism. We're gonna whoop on you. You're gonna get these hands. Okay, we're gonna kick over your collection plate and pee in your sacrament. That's what we're gonna do. All right, but here's the thing: these arrangements function under the British sovereignty, European. Okay, we were still European colonies. We were still basically an extension of Europe at that time. Okay. All right, and that precisely was the institutional model that many of our founders said, nah, we don't want any more part of that. They abandoned that rather than enshrine it. Now, the second source of this myth is cultural Christianity. Okay, so for much of American history, Christianity has exerted a dominant cultural influence, right? We're all Christian, aren't you? You heard what the man said, we're Christian. It shapes the social norms, the linguistic conventions, and basically public life. God bless you, right? In Jesus' name, right? You hear that all the time. And over time, that cultural prevalence has been conflated with constitutional authority. Did you know that 1/3 of the slaves that came to the United States during slavery were Muslim? Did y'all know that? But you don't see any remnants of that unless you're really looking, because it's still there, because it's been absorbed by the Christian religion. You know, when people surround the Kabbat and they pray over the offering, that's what that is. You see, that's Islam. But we see it as a cultural, we see it as a Christian Baptist belief, especially us in the Southern Baptist. But here's the thing, these cultural customs and these inherited traditions and the majority belief don't constitute legal foundation. That's just your belief system. The Constitution does not transmute cultural Christianity into governing law, nor does it grant religious custom juridical force. And see, a third contributor arises from these latter political movements that retroactively impose contemporary religious identities onto the founding period. Like these folk talking about, yeah, this is what they just, this revisionist history, basically. And see, during moments of social and political conflict, like we're dealing with right now, that historical narrative is simplified, it's reiterated, or people basically practice a selective reconstructed memory to advance whatever their present day agenda is, to justify what they're doing. See, and the founders are then recast, okay? Not as deliberate architects of a secular legal order, but as symbolic figures that they invoke to legitimize modern religious or political claims. These white right now, you know, when they had the largest Nazi rally in America, it happened in Madison Square Garden. The largest Nazi rally they had, and they had a statue of George Washington in there. Okay, keep in mind, we fought and killed Nazis during World War II. You see? So the Nazis have been America's enemy. But see, here's the thing. What ultimately, and shout out to Song Jack, thank you so much, 9694. We got 11 super chats. I appreciate everybody who's learned something. Where was I at? Look, the nations are defined not by in their informal practice or whatever the popular sentiment is. They're formed by a legal framework, like we say all the time. This is a nation of laws. Okay? And in the United States, that framework or that law was intentionally designed to separate religious authority from state power. Okay? Now, again, cultural influence may fluctuate across generations, but the Constitution remains the same. It's the foundation, it remains fixed. So bottom line is America was founded by folks shaped within a predominantly Christian culture, but it was deliberately constructed as a secular system of governance in order to prevent the violence and the war that had ravaged Europe for centuries and tore Europe apart. They still don't get along. And the founders understood that when the state begins to, the word is subsume, or when the religion captures the state, both of them become corrupt. That's just an inevitable, it's gonna happen. Why do you think all these it's Muslim countries? Look, I'm not picking on Muslims. I know we got some Muslims in here. But if we talk about Iran right now, Iran in 1970, when it was a secular country run by the Shia, it was progressive. It wasn't perfect. It was not perfect, but it was secular. Women had rights. Science was moving in the right direction. The minute Islam took over, look what happened to it. Look what happened to it. So what you should learn from that is the minute that religion fuses with the state or fuses with the government, both of them become corrupt. Now, you don't have to like what I just said about Islam or what it would be the same way if it was Christianity, because government and religion don't mix. You don't believe me? Look at Europe. And so the system that we have here in the United States, it was not established by accident, nor was it established to be hostile to faith. It was intentionally structured to allow religion to exist and develop and flourish freely without government control, endorsement, or enforcement. You see? And by not allowing these things to tangle, political authority with religious powers, the founders of the United States sought simultaneously to protect faith from the coercion and to protect the republic from this sectarian domination. And see, this separation was not a rejection of religion. It was necessary, and it was a condition to maintain genuine religious liberty. Did you all understand that? Do you understand that? And you got some current, you can look at all these religions, go to Afghanistan, you can go to Iran, look at all these countries where the religious people are these theocracies. They are not good. You see? Now here's the thing. Once it becomes clear how Christianity can be stripped of its moral substance and redeployed as a political instrument, like what you see happening right now in this white nationalist movement here in the United States, the next question becomes unavoidable. If Christianity does not, in fact, teach racial hierarchy, if the Constitution does not establish a Christian nation, if the founders explicitly rejected religious governance of the state, then how in the hell did so many come to believe this so confidently, that God sanctioned slavery and God sanctioned segregation and God sanctioned this racial hierarchy system that we have? And the thing you have to understand is the answer is not ignorance. It never was. What followed wasn't confusion or misunderstanding. It was something far more calculated. It was moral engineering. What you had was a deliberate and concerted effort to deform Jesus's teachings. Somebody type hallelujah in the chat room. It was purposely done. just enough to render exploitation morally tolerable. And this is where the central narrative truly begins. See, the lie was never ignorance. It was justification. You had European white enslavers who operated entirely within this Judeo-Christian moral framework. These people were religious people. They knew right from wrong just like y'all do. Nobody wants to tell a story and they're the bad guy. Who wants to be evil? You always the one to wear the white hat. No one wants to occupy the role of the villain in the moral narrative. So what do? They justified enslaving and brutalizing millions of Africans and slaughtering Native Americans when they fully understood these are our ancestors to be human beings who are capable and organized and accomplished. And so what did that do? That put them in a profound moral dilemma. And so they had to justify it. They had to justify dehumanizing these people who knew that was as human as they were. These were educated people, man. These weren't stupid people. They had to justify their immorality. Because see, here's the thing. Within the Christian religion, as most of you all know, human beings were created in the image of God. Is there a lie in that? Did I lie? Didn't God create man in his own image? So how do you enslave another human being? Because if you do that, then it's not just exploitative, it's sinful. It constituted a direct violation of the moral order that these so-called Christians profess to uphold. So rather than abandon the Christianity, they just said, well, we'll just reconstruct it a little bit. We'll interpret it a little bit. So these people persuaded themselves that God ordained slavery. Hallelujah. They said that, oh no, those Africans, they are subhuman, they're monkeys, they're beasts. They came up with all kinds, they were cursed. The Africans were cursed, they're soulless, they're closer to animals than people. They knew damn well that wasn't true. They knew it was a lie. You understand? They knew it. It's evident in the words of many of them. This momentous question, like a fire bell in the night, awakened to filled me with terror. I trembled. And yet, when I heard the debate, I saw more clearly than ever that the struggle must be between those who held slaves as a thing wholly right and normal, and those who held it to be wholly wrong and abnormal. That's Abraham Lincoln. He was reflecting on the moral contradiction of slavery within the Christian worldview in the Lincoln-Douglas debates in 1858. They knew it was wrong. Even at that time, Lincoln recognized there was a moral rupture. And the defenders of slavery did not. They cloaked racial domination in scripture. So on the flip side, you got people like Robert Louis Dabney. He was a Confederate theologian. The man was a Presbyterian minister. He said the scriptures everywhere speak of servants and of obedience to masters and never to condemnation of slavery as existing among men. They use that to justify slavery. You see? Are y'all still with me? Hit the number 1 button if you can hear me. What about Jefferson Davis, first president, the only president of the Confederate States? We assert that the Negro is not equal to the white man, that slavery, subordination to the superior race is the natural, normal condition. These were not marginal figures. They were institutional leaders. They were political authorities. They were theological arbiters, and they deploy religious rhetoric to render their system not merely lawful, but righteous. And see, here's the thing that you got to understand. They knew it was fraudulent. Because see, by the time the transatlantic slave trade reached its apex, Europeans already knew better. They weren't speculating about Africa. They weren't imagining a primitive people. They traded with African kingdoms, family. They negotiated with African royalty. They signed treaties with African kings and nobles. Hell, the African elites, particularly in regions such as the Kingdom of the Congo, they were educated in Europe. These people were fluent in Portuguese and Latin and practicing Christianity and corresponding with European monarchs and diplomatic equals. Did you know that the richest man in the world was from Mali? His name was Mansa Musa. This man, when he did his Hajj from the kingdom in Mali and went on down to Mecca, he was giving out gold the whole way. He distorted the value of gold. They knew who we were. You don't think they knew who we were? So what happened between being over on the in the Eastern Hemisphere to coming to the West? All of a sudden, we went from being kings and dignitaries and scholars to being monkeys. They had to lie to themselves. Europeans knew about the libraries, the learning centers in Timbuktu. They knew it long before its modern rediscovery. They understood what Egypt was and Nubia was and Kush was. Those civilizations shaped Greece and Rome. They knew that much of what much of what Europe labeled as civilization passed through Africa and the Islamic world. I mean, hell, they had just gotten rid of the Moors in 1492. You don't think that they knew Africans were civilized? They were fully aware of what the Moors did to the Iber Peninsula and the European continent. These are Africans, Moors are Africans, and North African Muslims who governed large portions of Europe for centuries. They literally drew it out of the Dark Ages through advances in mathematics and medicine and science and architecture and higher education. Matter of fact, it's my understanding that many of the black people that they kidnapped or bought from Africa, they referred to them as Moorish. So they knew who these people were. They knew who we were. How you go from Moorish to monkey? Unless it's a deliberate lie. It was a lie. It was a lie that became necessary. You can't enslave greatness without first denying the greatness. You can't brutalize those who you fully recognize as human without annihilating your own conscience. The racial categories were invented where none had previously existed, just to justify their immorality. Scripture was contorted. Skin color was transformed into destiny. Black Africans were expelled from the moral community, not through ignorance, but through necessity. They had to do it, otherwise they wouldn't be able to live with themselves. Why do you think the Yazidis demoralized the Jewish people? Dehumanized it. Why do you think they did that? It's a human trait. When you don't like somebody, what's the first thing you young people do? You call them an op. Somebody type op in the chat room. You call them ops. That's no longer Jamal from up the street. That's your op. Somebody you went to elementary school. No, that's my op. That's my enemy. Or as we did here in the United States, those are red savages. And then that way we can go slow. Oh, those aren't human beings. They're savages. That's how that works. The op. It's a trick that you have to play on your mind so you can dehumanize. We don't do that on this page. That's why I told y'all last night. You know goddamn well that these ICE agents rounding up all these black and brown and Asian people, you know that's some evil racist shit. But my foundational black American brothers and sisters, we benefit from it. But that still don't change the fact that it's some evil shit. You'll drive yourself crazy trying to justify evil. I will not let you do it on this page. You can go somewhere else and try. I'm sure there's some black conservatives oh, oh my God, this is law and order. I don't do that on this page. We will not be intellectually disingenuous on this page. I will not allow you to be morally inept on this page. We're going to call it how we see it. Strikes, ball, we're going to call it. You voted for Donald Trump, fine. He's doing some evil shit. Excuse my language. It's still evil. You might benefit from it. You're going to have more jobs. Gas will be cheaper. We jacking people for oil now. Okay, that's pretty bad. But you know what? Let's just deal with it. We're not going to run from it. All I'm saying is this, family. Them same people that go pray on Sunday and quote the scripture back then, they was trafficking human beings on Monday. And it wasn't because they were confused. It was because they were committed to power and they required divine sanction to preserve it, or they'll go crazy. You up here forcefully having sex with women and all this stuff, they can take it. Oh, these black women are, they're built, they're Jezebels. They want it. They had to justify that immorality. Can you imagine living with yourself? Man, look, racism did not emerge from ignorance of black excellence. It emerged from the necessity of denying black excellence in order to exploit it without having to regard oneself as monstrous. And trust and believe, they have been monsters. And white people know they've been monsters. That's why you got so many other white people saying, nah, that ain't cool. But look, I got a little bit more to say, but I want to take this special time to acknowledge all the people who have learned something tonight. We have 11 super chats and we have a couple of cash apps. I want to start off with the cash apps. The cash app is running across the bottom of the screen. If you learned something, hit the like button. If you've learned something, hit the like button. If you've learned something, let me know by hitting the like button. Shout out to Mr. Watkins and Mr. Johnson. Thank you so much. I appreciate you guys and these cash apps. You guys are amazing. Thank you so much. Also, big shout out to Mr. Doss. Now, I'm going to take the opportunity to thank everybody who has contributed to the cash app. Let's read all the quotes here and the words. Again, big shout out to Ben Brockton. We have 11 super chats. Maybe we can get to 15, only if you learn something. I appreciate it. I'd like to get to 15 super chats. I think I put forth some good information here tonight. And I know we went a little bit past the 3-hour threshold I'd like to stop at, but I wanted to get this in. So, my man Ben says, keep doing what you're doing. Thank you so much. Christopher Robbins said, you're wonderful. I have a civil case I would love to share with you. Location NYC. Well, thank you so much for prompting that. I'll use this as opportunity to get a shameless plug in. As you all know, I'm an attorney licensed in multiple states. I'm also licensed in New York. Typically, I deal with personal injury cases, car accidents. So if you've been involved in a motor vehicle accident anywhere in the country, I have friends all over. Give me a call at 713-229-0770. You can call me at 713-229-0770. Let me tell you right now, don't call me if it's a family law case. Don't call me if it's a contract case. I don't want to talk about that, okay? I am only dealing with car accidents these days, okay? So if you've been involved in a car accident, feel free to contact me at 713-229-0770. Now, if you have another matter that you would like to talk about, feel free to schedule a conference with me by emailing me at spurlingdennis@gmail.com. I talk to you about anything for an hour minimum. Feel free to call me. If you want to talk about something else, as long as you're paying, I'll listen, okay? And I'll give you the best advice that I can, whether it's legal or non-legal related. But that's how we're going to do that, right? Call 713-229-0770 if it's a car accident. If you want to schedule a one-on-one conference with Uncle D and have and learn something on your time and your dime, feel free to email me at spurlingdennis@gmail.com and we'll set that up. But thank you so much, Christopher Robin. Let me see. Let me put the Cash App back up on here just in case somebody wants to contribute. Again, you don't owe me anything, okay? You don't owe me a dime, but if you learn something, I think it's only fair that I should earn something. We got 12 super chats. Let's see if we can get, like I said, 15 to be a win. Let me see here. Who else we got in here? Somebody type resting in the chat room. Cultural Superpower, thank you for the $5 super sticker. My girl, I'm sorry, Mr. JMC Queen 84 said we're resting. Also, intricately tangled. Thank you for all you do, Mr. Dennis Spurling. We are resting. Yes, we are, baby girl. Yaya Skids, appreciate your teachings and all you do. Thank you so much. All praises to the Most High. Ain't that the truth? Also, Mark the Freelancer, thank you so much for the $2 super sticker. Learn something. Thank you, Torian Jones. And also, Chris Barber Crusades gave people Bible or the Blade. They sure did. That's a heck of a way of putting it. Thank you so much, Chris. Son Jack 9694. Obama isn't FBA. What did he do for FBAs? And he deported everybody while kids waited in K. That was Obama stuff. Don Lemon claims he's Christian. Leviticus 18 and 12. 20 and 13. Yep, man shall not sleep with man as he lies with a woman. That's exactly what it says. Or not exactly. Lie with, yeah, you know what I mean. But anyway, yeah, that's exact, right? Ain't nobody playing fair, Mr. Spurling. I'm just squirrel trying to get a elevated engineer. All right, thank you so much, man. I appreciate that. So let's go ahead and close this thing out. Shout out to everybody who came through. Make sure y'all hit the #1, but we're gonna keep it hot, man. We talk about real things. Looks, man, everybody, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Okay, I'm marching towards 100,000. I think I need like another 30 people. And let me see where we are. Let me see where my likes are before we finish. Because I'm going to have to start turning on the subscriber-only comments if you guys don't get these likes up. Let's see. How many likes do we have? Somebody let me know how many likes we have. We have 172 likes. Y'all wrong. It's 2 left shoes. But anyway, look, fam. Let's go ahead and wrap this thing up, so I can let you release you all from this study session. I guess what I want y'all to understand clearly tonight, what we're witnessing right now. It's not a misunderstanding of history. It's not even a disagreement over theology, and it's not a clash of opinions that can be resolved with civility alone. It is the reemergence of an old pattern, one that has always ended the same way. When religion is stripped of conscience and fused to power, it doesn't uplift the nation. It disciplines people. It doesn't save souls. It sorts through bodies. It doesn't call powerful people to account. It actually does the opposite. It gives them cover. And that's not speculation, that's history. Every time Christianity becomes repurposed as a tool for racial hierarchy, the result has been catastrophic. And slavery justified as a divine order, segregation justified as God's will, colonial violence baptized as civilizing the savages. That was their mission. And every time the people wielding God's name insisted they were righteous and lawful and necessary, they did it every time. They always said they were restoring order. They always said they were advancing or defending civilization. They always said God was on their side. And guess what? They were always, each and every time, wrong. So what I want you to do is hear this clearly. When you see Christianity being used to sanctify selective enforcement or racialized punishment and state-sanctioned violence, when mercy disappears and only discipline remains, you're not watching God in action. What you're watching is the moral collapse of a nation dressed up as righteousness. And here's the warning. History does not forgive those who repeat this pattern. It definitely won't spare institutions that confuse power with morality, and it does not protect nations that believe they can weaponize God without consequences. Because once faith becomes a badge of dominance instead of a restraint on it, everything breaks. Law becomes arbitrary, humanity becomes conditional, and violence, horrible, horrible violence, it becomes justified. And that's what you see happening. You see how they justifying the killing of that young white woman, Brene Good? You see that? Even making up lies and stuff. Talk about the ICE officer had his ribs broken. That turned out to be just wholly, just a straight fabrication of the truth. And see, here's the thing about it. No one is safe in a system like that. Not even the people who think they're in control. And see, this is not about a left or a right or a conservative versus a liberal. It's not about that. It's not even about Christianity versus secularism. It's about whether our country will continue to allow this myth to override law and ideology, to override conscience, and power to override truth. And I want y'all to take this seriously. Black people, I know you're resting, but take this seriously, because see, the same machinery that once used scripture to justify our chains and enslavement is now being recalibrated to justify erasure and exclusion and cages. And it's not going to stop where its architects think it will stop. It never does. History's watching. And a record is being written, and excuses are not going to survive the judgment that follows. And that's not a debate. That's a warning. God bless you all. I love you. Thank you for the time you spent with me tonight. I look forward to reading the comments. Thank you, everybody. It's been a wonderful time. Thank you, all the people here. And again, I give this message to everybody from a place of love. I love my country. I hope you love our country too. And I want our country to be the best place it's supposed to. I want our founders, as flawed as they were, they came up with this beautiful instrument called the Constitution. And I want us to fulfill those ideals highlighted in that document. Thank you all so much. I appreciate everybody. And as I always say at this time, I'm out.
In the Spurling podcast, hit the like button, subscribe.